Fingertips pressed to the glass. The hybrid pulsed weakly in response, but its energy was fading fast. Its roots were flickering out like candle wicks, drowning in their own wax. Mira swallowed hard. She knew the rules. She was not supposed to interfere with experiments without instruction. But the root mother had once told her, "A living thing does not wait for permission to suffer." Mira inhaled. The scent was sharp. Burnt chlorophyll, ruptured membranes, the unmistakable musk of dying growth. She closed her eyes. She reached inward. Her power responded like a rushing tide. Heat flushed through her palms, first, then her arms, then her chest, as though a furnace had been lit inside her ribs. The braids along her spine vibrated, whispering warnings. But Mira ignored them. She pressed harder. She pushed her will into the plant's collapsing cells. Root math awoke inside her, automatic and precise. She saw chemical bonds unraveling like frayed threadwork. She saw the hybrid's genetic map flicker, unspooling into broken patterns. She saw which links needed to be reforged, which strands needed to be rewoven, which pathways needed restoration before life slipped away entirely. She forced her energy into those places. The hybrid convulsed. Leaves spasmed outward. Its stem pulsed as if a second heartbeat had been installed within it. Mira gritted her teeth, focusing through the pain spreading behind her eyes. Healing was always costly. Every lesson the root mother had ever taught her made that clear. But the plant was stabilizing. She could feel its terror quieting into a soft, trembling hope. "Just a little more," she whispered. And then the cost came. A sharp snap inside her mind. A memory tore free. Mira gasped and nearly fell backward. For a moment, everything was white, blinding, hollow, like a sudden hole punched through her consciousness. The plant was no longer screaming. It now breathed in slow, steady waves, its roots finally anchoring in the soil again. But Mira couldn't breathe at all. Her hands flew to her temples. Something was missing. Something enormous. She felt the absence, like an amputated limb. She tried to recall her mother's face. Nothing came. The more she reached for it, the more the empty space widened. She remembered her mother's laughter, soft and warm like rain on stone. She remembered stories whispered over nighttime tea. She remembered hands that braided her hair, fingers gentle but sure. But the face, her mother's face, was gone, erased, stolen. Mira staggered to her feet. The room tilted. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream, but no sound emerged. She pressed her hands to the glass of the tank again, not to help the plant this time, but to anchor herself to something real, something alive. Tears blurred her vision. The hybrid was safe, and she was not. "Mira," the voice came from behind her. She turned. Dr. Ikeda stood in the doorway, clipboard in hand, eyes unreadable behind her thin-rimmed glasses. She must have been observing the energy spike. Of course she had. There were monitors everywhere. The fellowship always watched. "You overextended," Dr. Ikeda said. Not accusation, not sympathy, simply fact. Mira couldn't speak. "Come with me," the scientist added, stepping closer. "We need to document the cognitive side effects." Side effects. The phrase made Mira's gut twist. She felt for her braids. They were quiet now, too quiet, as though the codes inside them were in mourning. Her hands trembled as Dr. Ikeda guided her toward the hallway. Mira took one last look at the revived hybrid. It lifted its leaves toward her in weak gratitude. And Mira felt a stab of guilt that she could not return the gesture fully, because something precious had been traded for its life, something irreplaceable, something that the root mother had warned her would be taken, piece by piece, if she pushed too far. Mira followed Dr. Ikeda into the sterilized corridor. Her steps sounded distant, hollow. She tried again, one last time, to summon her mother's face. A blank space answered. The root mother had been right. The gifts came with a price. And the second price had now been paid. Mira walked in silence beside Dr. Ikeda, each step heavier than the last. The sterile hallway hummed with quiet machinery, but beneath the mechanical sounds, she heard something deeper. The plants in the lower labs whispering in uneasy tones, sensing her imbalance. Their voices carried threads of concern, like vines brushing lightly against her consciousness. Mira, Dr. Ikeda said softly, did you experience disorientation, lapse in temporal continuity, any visual distortions? Mira didn't respond. Speaking felt dangerous, like opening her mouth would let the hole inside her widen until it swallowed her whole. Dr. Ikeda studied her face. So, something was lost. Mira stopped walking. The scientist's calmness scraped against her nerves like sandpaper. Don't say it like that, Mira whispered. Don't say it as if it's data. What else should I say? Dr. Ikeda replied. Mira clenched her jaw. A memory flickered. Not a face, but a moment. Herself as a child, sitting between warm knees, her hair being carefully oiled and parted. She remembered the sensation of fingers combing through her coils. She remembered the smell of jasmine, honey, and sun-warmed bark. She remembered love. But the face was fog. A shape she could no longer touch. The agony of it pressed against her chest. We warned you that your abilities come with neurological fragility, Dr. Ikeda said, more gently this time. We will record the loss. It may help prevent further erosion. Mira's hands curled into fists. Erosion. What a word to use for a mother's face. I didn't have a choice, Mira said. It was dying. Dr. Ikeda nodded once, not dismissing, just noting. You did what you thought was correct. But now you understand why we monitor you. Mira looked at her sharply. Monitor or control, that depends on whether you keep putting yourself at risk. Mira's braids shuddered, the coated oils inside them vibrating faintly. The root mother's old teachings murmured beneath her thoughts. They will take what they can. They will dress it in concern, but feed from you all the same. A cold dread settled in Mira's stomach. Dr. Ikeda guided her into a small cognitive testing room. Screens lined the walls, glowing with pale pulses that responded to her presence. Sit, the scientist instructed. Mira obeyed. She felt too hollow to resist. Dr. Ikeda clipped tiny sensors to her temples and wrists. We'll run a recall assessment first, then perception mapping, then no. Mira's voice cracked. Just give me a minute. For a long moment, Dr. Ikeda didn't move. Then she exhaled and stepped back, allowing Mira that small mercy. Mira closed her eyes. Inside the darkness, she searched. She tried to rebuild her mother's face, piece by piece. The shape of the cheekbone, the angle of the jaw, the curve of a smile. Each time, the image dissolved into blankness, like a drawing erased before the ink fully dried. Her breath shuddered. She felt a sob rising, not loud, but deep, a tremor of grief that rooted itself behind her ribs. If she tried hard enough, if she forced her mind into those empty spaces, maybe something would return. Maybe she could. But the moment she pushed, something inside her snapped shut. A door locking, a memory sealed away forever. Mira gasped and opened her eyes. Her heart thundered in her chest. She tasted copper and fear on her tongue. Her palms were slick with sweat. It's gone, she whispered. Dr. Ikeda didn't respond. She simply wrote something on her tablet. Mira felt the words like a blade. You don't care, Mira said. You really don't care. Dr. Ikeda paused her writing. I care about the consequences. Not for me, Mira said. For your research. Dr. Ikeda didn't deny it. Mira looked away, blinking hard. The testing monitors pulsed faster around her, sensing her distress. A small fern in the corner drooped sympathetically, its tendrils reaching toward her like a child wanting to hold her hand. The gesture fractured her. Her mother used to comfort her that way, arms encircling her, pulling her close, thumbs stroking her scalp until she felt safe again. Mira remembered everything except the face. Her throat tightened. Root Mother warned me. She said every miracle eats something. She said the gifts were never meant for use without guidance. She said, "She's not here," Dr. Ikeda said, "and you are no longer a child in a village greenhouse. You cannot treat these abilities as folklore." Folklore? Mira repeated, stunned. Dr. Ikeda's eyes flicked toward the sensors. Your culture's terminology is poetic, but you need precision. You need discipline. What you did in Lab 4 was dangerous and unsanctioned, and now you're grieving the result. Mira rose from the chair, trembling with anger. You talk as if I chose this, as if I wanted to lose her. You did choose, Dr. Ikeda said calmly. You always choose. That is what power is. Mira stared at her. Something inside her twisted. She walked out. Dr. Ikeda didn't call her back. The hallway felt colder than before. Every step sent small shocks of pain up Mira's calves, leftover energy from the healing. Her braids whispered frantic warnings, the oils inside them buzzing like frightened bees. The plants along the corridor shrank from her presence. They sensed instability, fear, loss. One vine brushed her arm gently, releasing a soft puff of pollen. It felt like a hug. Mira touched it back, grateful. I'm okay, she whispered, even though she wasn't. She reached the greenhouse atrium, the one place in the institute that didn't feel like a cage. The dome roof shimmered with nightlight, revealing hundreds of species growing in floating beds, spiraling tubes, and hanging columns. The air was warm, humid, alive. Mira stepped inside. Immediately, the plants stirred, leaves pivoted toward her. Roots shifted, stems quivered. Their voices rose like a soft chorus. Concern, relief, and sorrow. They sensed what she had lost. Mira walked deeper into the greenery, her fingers brushing leaves as she passed. Each touch steadied her, but each also amplified the pain, because the plants remembered faces. Plants never forgot what they witnessed. Every solar cycle, every shadow, every smile. They kept it all. Can you show me? She whispered to a tall, flowering stalk, her favorite. A species she had helped nurture from seed. Can you show me her face? The plant hesitated. Then it lowered its head slowly, petals folding inward. Apology. I see, Mira whispered. Whatever she had lost was not recoverable, not even through the memory of other life. She sank to the floor, leaning against a mossy pillar. Her braids spilled over her shoulders, humming with frantic worry. She touched them gently. I know, she said quietly. I know. She closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of soil and chlorophyll. She tried to calm the trembling inside her chest. After a long while, footsteps approached. Mira didn't look up. She knew the sound. Dr. Laus, the fellowship's lead geneticist, the one who smiled too easily, the one the plants despised. Mira, Dr. Laus said, voice smooth as polished stone. You gave us quite a surge tonight. Mira kept her head bowed. Leave me alone. I wish I could, he said lightly, but your little miracle has caused quite the stir. You repaired a collapsing hybrid's genome without tools, without preparation, without hesitation. He crouched in front of her. Fascinating, he whispered. Mira looked away, jaw tightening. I didn't do it for you. I know, he said. And that's what makes it even more interesting. He leaned closer. Tell me, Mira, what did it take from you? She flinched. Dr. Lau smiled, softly, almost kindly, but with an undertone that made her skin crawl. "You don't have to answer," he said. "I can see it. The tremor, the memory hunger in your eyes. The root mother's magic takes as much as it gives." Her braids shuddered. Mira stood quickly, creating distance between them. "I'm going to my room." Dr. Laus rose as well. "Do that. Rest. Tomorrow we'll run blood work and cognitive imaging." "No," Mira said. "No more tests tonight." It wasn't a request. Mira's pulse spiked. Dr. Laus stepped closer, but just then the plants reacted. A massive tendril of night-blooming ivy lashed out between them, arching protectively in front of Mira. Dozens of leaves turned toward Dr. Laus with a low hiss of disapproval. Dr. Laus stepped back. "Well," he murmured, "someone's in a mood." Mira placed a trembling hand on the ivy. "Thank you," she whispered. The plant softened around her, but remained blocking the geneticist. Dr. Laus straightened his coat. "You're stronger than we expected, Mira. But strength? That comes with consequences." He turned and walked away. Mira stayed in the greenhouse, long after he left. She sat in the cradle of the ivy's coil and let the plant's soft hum soothe her. She felt exhausted in a way she couldn't name, like something inside her had cracked open and the air kept blowing through it. After some time, she spoke softly. "Root Mother, I know you warned me. I know I should have listened." Her voice trembled. "But how do I carry this? How do I carry a price I didn't know I was paying?" The plants around her didn't answer with words, but their leaves brushed her shoulders in sympathy. Mira pulled her knees to her chest. She didn't cry loudly. The grief was too deep, too raw. She cried in quiet, trembling breaths, as though each tear slipped through the space where her mother's face had once lived. Eventually she whispered, "I won't let them take anything else. I won't." Her braids pulsed warmly at that. Agreement, or warning, or both. The greenhouse dimmed as night deepened. The plants settled around her like guardians, forming a living shelter. And Mira stayed there, grieving softly, knowing that the second price had left a scar that would never fade. But something else grew in its place. Resolve. A thin, fierce root pushing through the soil of her fear. She didn't know what the Institute wanted next, but she knew what she would no longer give freely: pieces of herself. She didn't know what the Institute wanted next, but she knew what she would no longer give freely: pieces of herself. That vow hummed through her veins as she rose from the ivy's protective coil. Her knees were stiff, and her skin felt stretched too thin, as though the loss of her mother's face had carved new hollows beneath her eyes. But she walked anyway. The greenhouse doors curved open with a sigh, the plants' voices softening into a lullaby behind her. Outside, the hallway lights flickered, the buildings breathing. A mix of shifting pipes, quiet fans, and electrical pulses seemed sharper than usual, as though the Meridian Institute itself listened more closely after nightfall. Mira's steps echoed down the corridor, each one feeling too loud, too vulnerable. She passed a window overlooking the marshlands beyond the Institute grounds. Moonlight shimmered over the water, turning the reeds silver. Somewhere far below that surface, the first garden pulsed with its own rhythm. Mira paused, pressing her palm to the glass. "Did you know?" she whispered, not sure whether she addressed the root mother, the marsh, or her own reflection. "Did you know what this would cost me?" A ripple passed through the reeds outside. No wind caused it. The motion traveled like a message, as though something recognized her question and responded with a quiet, mournful yes. Mira let the hand fall. A sudden noise behind her, soft, metallic, made her turn sharply. A cleaning automaton rolled past, its bristles whispering. Paranoia, exhaustion. She rubbed her temples, wishing her thoughts could quiet for just a moment. The second price still weighed heavily on her. Whenever she tried to recall her mother's face, she found only emptiness, a soft blur, a missing shape. She feared that if she probed the wound too hard, she'd lose even the memories that remained. She made her way toward her dormitory wing. The walls here looked the same as always, sterile white, evenly spaced lights, the hum of machinery. Yet tonight, something subtle had shifted. The shadows seemed deeper. The lights seemed colder. Mira slowed her steps, listening, closing the door firmly behind her. Her small quarters, barely bigger than a greenhouse pantry, felt emptier than usual. The desk with her scattered notes, the small cot pushed against the wall, the single hanging plant she'd insisted on keeping in the room. A trailing pothos that now looked droopy, like it had been waiting for her. Mira exhaled and touched the pothos gently. Its leaves brightened at her touch, voice warm with relief. "Hey," she said softly. "I'm back." It curled toward her wrist, comfort given, comfort received. Mira sat at the edge of the cot, her braids slipping over her shoulders. The coated oils inside them gave a faint glimmer under the dim lamp, soft green pulses that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. Her scalp tingled, a warning, a message. She closed her eyes and listened. A faint whisper rose from the root oils, too fast, too sharp, like someone running fingers along a stringed instrument. Mira, daughter seed. Thick with sorrow. The root mother's voice was faint, strained. Mira inhaled sharply. Root mother, you're still here. Not as before. The first garden weakens. They disturb what they should revere. Who? Mira whispered. The braids quivered. The ones who watch you. The ones who take. The fellowship. Mira's heartbeat quickened. You said gifts take something in return. You said the price would rise. Always. But they feed the cost. They accelerate it. They think power blooms in cold hands. Mira bowed her head. I didn't mean to lose her. I didn't know. The voice gentled. A child cannot know the shape of a forest before she enters it. Mira's eyes burned. I can't lose anything else. Then you must root yourself. Deep. Deeper than they can reach. Her braids tightened like vines, binding around her shoulders. What does that mean? It means you cannot remain here long. A chill rushed through Mira's chest. Leave the institute. She couldn't. Not yet. They still held her research notes, her samples, her mother's glyph book. There were answers she still needed, secrets the fellowship had kept locked away for decades. I don't have a way out, she whispered. They're watching every step. Then you wait and grow around their fences. The root mother's voice flickered, dimming like an ember. But take heed, daughter seed. The third price approaches, and choices harden like old bark. Mira reached up, grasping her braids as if she could hold on to the voice itself. Root mother, wait, please. The glow faded, the oils cooled. Silence. Mira bowed over her knees, breath shaking, the heaviness of the night pressing down on her. She felt fragile, like a stem that had been bent too far and might snap. After a long moment, she forced herself to rise. She washed her face in the basin, watching water drip from her chin. In the mirror, her eyes looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. She changed into a fresh shift and sat at her desk, opening her journal. Her handwriting from yesterday looked neat, confident. Tonight, her hands trembled as she wrote. I lost her face. The gift took it. The institute will take more. I can feel the next price waiting. I need a plan. I need strength. I need time. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. But she blinked them away. She turned to the page and wrote again, slower this time. I will not let them break me. She underlined it twice. A sound made her freeze, a soft beep. Then another. The door panel glowed. Someone was outside. Mira snapped her journal shut and stood. The door slid open before she could speak. Dr. Lau stepped inside without invitation. His expression was composed, but there was an electric energy in his eyes, too alert, too hungry. "Mira," he said smoothly, "apologies for the late hour. We need a word." Her stomach dropped. "It can wait." "No," he replied, "it can't." He stepped fully into the room, and the door sealed behind him with a hiss. Mira backed up, braids lifting slightly like defensive tendrils. "What do you want?" Dr. Lau smiled, not kindly this time, but with the satisfaction of someone who has solved a complex equation. "Your test results came through, and Mira, you're no longer just an anomaly." He stepped closer. "You're an evolutionary event." The pothos on the shelf recoiled violently, its leaves trembling with fear. Mira felt her pulse hammering, a deep, primal dread spreading through her bones. Dr. Laus lowered his voice. "We're moving you to the upper labs at dawn." Mira's breath stopped. No one returned from the upper labs unchanged. Dr. Laus reached for her wrist to tag her with a tracker band. But the moment his hand neared her, Mira's braids lashed forward, a dozen vines of coated memory oil, snapping like defensive whips. They missed him by inches, cracking through the air, with a sound like shattering bark. Dr. Laus froze. Mira stared, equally shocked. She had never commanded that movement. It had reacted on its own, her body protecting itself instinctively, like a threatened plant. Dr. Laus slowly raised both hands. "Interesting," he murmured. Mira stood trembling, chest tight, braids quivering with fury and fear. Laus stepped back toward the door. "We'll speak again in the morning," he said softly. "Rest well. You're going to need it." He left. The door sealed. Silence hung thick as sap. Mira sank onto the cot, shaking, breath shallow. The pothos whispered a single frightened phrase. "Hide. Run. Now." Mira clutched her braids, her voice cracking. "I can't run yet," she whispered. "But I will not let them take anything else. I won't." The greenhouse's distant plants murmured in agreement, a low echo through the walls. And somewhere deep under the marsh, the root mother stirred, faint, wounded, but listening. Mira lay awake long into the night, heart aching with loss, fear, and something harder growing beneath it. Resolve. A new root pushing downward, preparing for whatever price would come next. Because after tonight, she finally understood. Power wasn't what had been given to her. Power was what she refused to surrender. 13 Betrayal in the Greenhouse, Chapter Separator. Mira didn't sleep, not even for a moment. She sat upright on the cot, knees pulled close, braid ends resting against her collarbone like living sensors. Every time she drifted even slightly towards sleep, her scalp prickled with a warning thrum, the same coded pulse repeating, "Danger, danger, danger." By the time the hallway lights brightened into the Institute's artificial dawn, Mira's eyes burned, but her mind felt carved sharp. She dressed slowly, aware of every sound in the corridor outside, the shuffle of boots, the hiss of rolling equipment, someone speaking too softly to discern. Every noise pressed against her nerves. When she opened her door, she kept her posture relaxed, her breath even. She walked like she belonged here, like she wasn't being hunted. The Institute hummed with its usual cold efficiency, machines waking, valves releasing pressure, scientists murmuring. Mira passed 2 archivists who stiffened slightly at her presence, their eyes dipping to her wrists as if checking for a tracker band she did not wear. She didn't greet them. She didn't trust anyone enough to pretend. The greenhouse wing lay at the far end of the eastern corridor. A greenhouse was the last place she expected answers, but it was the only place in the institute where she could hear her own thoughts through the plant's whispers. She moved quickly, head down, braids swaying with each step. The greenhouse doors slid open. Warm air washed over her, and then she heard them. Voices, not in front of her, above her. Mira froze in the shadow of the entrance. The glass ceiling arched high overhead, woven with suspended platforms and walkways meant for canopy research. Two blurry figures stood on the nearest walkway. She couldn't make out faces, but their voices drifted down clearly. "That girl cannot be left unattended much longer," Dr. Lau said. Mira's pulse hammered. Another voice, Dr. Salen's, answered, calm, cold. "If we rush the process, we risk burning out her vessel." Vessel. The word hit Mira like a slap. Under the walkway, the orchids shrank from her trembling hands. Laus made a frustrated sound. "We don't need her mind intact. The consciousness transfer won't require it." Her nails dug into her palms. Selene replied, "The root mother will resist unless the container is stable." Mira must remain functional until the moment of extraction. Extraction, container, vessel. Mira tasted metal on her tongue. Laus exhaled sharply. "We finally have the spark. A true Bloomwright conduit. Decades of attempting to cultivate one, only for the line to dilute. But this girl, she carries everything. The seed memory pathways, the chlorophyll integration. And now, after yesterday, the neural channels have opened." He paused. "She's ready." Mira gripped a support railing so tightly her fingers shook. Selene spoke again, voice low. "The root mother's consciousness has no physical body left. It requires a host woven from its own line, a child seed of the first garden. Mira's DNA is aligned more closely than her mother's was, or her grandmother's." A pause. "If we succeed, we will resurrect the most powerful botanical intelligence ever recorded." Laus laughed softly. "And this time, it will answer to us." The orchids trembled violently. Mira felt her braids ignite, an internal spark racing through the oil stored in them. Memory seed fragments, warning codes, ancestral glyphs. They all flared awake at once, lighting up her scalp like fireflies trapped under skin. A phrase pulsed through her skull. "Run, daughter seed. Do not let them take root inside you." She didn't think. She bolted. Her footsteps echoed through the greenhouse as the door slammed shut behind her. She tore down the corridor, breath sharp, heart slamming so loudly she could barely hear the plant's frantic whispers along the walls. The institute lights flickered overhead. Once, twice, again. The air pressure shifted. The facility was waking up fully now. Personnel moving, security protocols tightening for morning rotations. She turned left, then right, then down a stairwell she'd never used before. Every braid vibrated with direction. Go deeper, deeper, deeper. Hide in soil, hide in seeds. She burst through another door into a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of sterilizing solution and old earth. She'd never been here. She shouldn't be here. A sign on the wall read, "Restricted, Germination Wing A, authorized personnel only." Mira didn't slow. Her braids hummed louder, urging, steering, not with words now, but with instinct shaped through generations. Her ancestors had encoded pathways, warnings, maps into the oils she carried. All of them came alive as she ran. She reached the end of the hallway and nearly skidded into a heavy metal door with glowing green paneling. Seed chamber, sublevel 3. Biohazard warning, active cultures. Mira's breath caught in her throat. The seed chamber. She'd heard rumors, whispers of forbidden experiments, germinated extinct flora, storage vaults containing memory seeds too dangerous to open. A place where even the scientists were afraid to linger. Her braids flared. "In. Now." She slammed her hand onto the panel. The lock clicked. The door opened with a slow, cold hiss. A wave of chilled air rolled over her, thick with the scent of soil, old bark, and something metallic beneath it, like rust, like blood. Mira stepped inside. Lights flickered on in a long row, illuminating a corridor carved from concrete and glass. Massive cylindrical tanks lined the walls, each filled with dark soil or nutrient mist. Some tanks held seeds larger than her fists, strapped with monitoring bands. Others held tiny glowing embryos, pulsing softly beneath fluid like underwater stars. The door sealed shut behind her. For a moment, Mira simply stood there, breathing in the stillness. But the stillness didn't last. A whisper filtered through the chamber. Not mechanical, not human. Daughter seed, why have you come? Mira's breath faltered. Because she had nowhere else left. Because she was being hunted. Because the fellowship wanted to hollow her out and fill her with something ancient and unwilling. She swallowed and whispered, I need help. The whisper came again, closer. Then you must open what sleeps. Mira looked at the tanks, hundreds of them, stretching into the dim. Her braids tingled. Tugging her left, she followed, past rows of dormant seeds, past tanks covered in frost, past chambers where roots pressed against glass like trapped hands. Finally, she reached the farthest corner of the seed chamber, a small glass case resting alone on a pedestal. Inside it lay a single seed, black, veined with green light, beating like a heart. Mira inhaled sharply. The root mother had described these in her earlier visions. First seeds, memory-bound, ancestor kept. Take it. Mira's fingers hovered over the case. What will it do to me? The whisper answered slowly, like leaves brushing stone. Save you. Her braids pulsed. Her heart pounded. Footsteps echoed faintly above, distant, frantic. Search teams calling her name. Mira set her jaw. She opened the case. The seed whispered one word, vibrating through her palm like a living ember. Grow. And above, the fellowship reached the greenhouse to find Mira missing. Their anger rippled through the institute like a storm. But Mira stood alone in the seed chamber, clutching a seed that beat in time with her heartbeat. A betrayal had driven her here. But what she held now would change everything. Because in the seed chamber's dim, pulsing half-light, Mira finally understood. She was no vessel. She was becoming a force. She was becoming a force. And forces, real ones, ancient ones, never went unnoticed. The seed chamber reacted first. The roots threaded along the ceiling tightened, coiling like awakened serpents. The glass tanks lining the walls shuddered as the embryonic seeds inside them pulsed in synchrony with her heartbeat. Light rippled across the floor moss in widening circles, as if the earth itself were signaling an alarm or a welcome she couldn't yet interpret. Mira stepped back from the cracked cylinder, her breath sharp in her chest. The preserved braid inside drifted forward again, pushing against the newly fractured glass, as though it could smell her oils, her lineage, her awakening power. It vibrated in a rapid staccato rhythm, Bloomwright code spoken too fast for her mind to parse. Her braids heated in response, each one buzzing with ancestral urgency. The glyphs woven into the strands flared like sparks trapped in hair. Warnings, commands, memories she hadn't earned yet but carried anyway. The air smelled faintly of burning rosemary and crushed petals, the scent of overloading root math. You're pushing me, Mira whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking to the chamber, the preserved braid, or the power rising uncontrollably inside her. I don't know how to hold all this. The crack in the cylinder spread with a soft, crystalline groan. A thin stream of glowing amber fluid leaked down the glass, hitting the moss in a soft patter. The moss hissed, recoiled, then surged upward, eager and hungry. It devoured the fluid in seconds. Mira flinched. It had never moved that way before. Behind her, an overhead ripple sounded, like a breath pulled through roots. The ceiling vines constricted, then loosened, then reached toward her with the slow, inevitable gravity of something that had waited centuries to feel a familiar pulse. She backed away, but the floor trembled under her steps. The entire room was shifting around her, adjusting to her presence, calibrating to her biology. You weren't just storing things here, she murmured. You were preparing something. No, preparing her. The amber in the cylinder glowed brighter, illuminating the braid inside with a heartbeat-like pulse. It was no longer dormant. It was no longer content to float as a preserved relic. It was awake, and it recognized her. Her mother's missing memories pressed at the edges of her mind, as if trying to force themselves into coherence. A flash of warm fingers braiding her hair. A whisper. If they ever find out what we are, run. Mira, a loud mechanical clang sounded far down the corridor. Mira froze. The fellowship had opened the outer greenhouse doors. More footsteps followed, slow, synchronized, purposeful. Not a search party, a retrieval unit. Her stomach lurched. They weren't guessing where she'd gone. They knew. Her braids tightened against her back like living restraints, humming sharply. Danger glyphs this time. Run. Hide. Move. Now. The preserved braids slammed against the cracking glass. The cylinder groaned. A fissure tore downward, spraying shards across the moss. The entire chamber shook. Mira stumbled sideways as roots burst from the far wall, slithering across the floor like a living warning barrier. They curled protectively around her feet before she kicked herself free. Stop helping me. Please stop helping me, she hissed, stumbling toward the inner corridor. But the chamber didn't listen. It couldn't. The first garden awakened through her. Not with her. Another crack. The cylinder's surface split down the center. She didn't wait to see what emerged. She sprinted deeper into the seed chamber, past old growths that radiated silent screams, past jars containing memory seeds that trembled as she passed, past shelves of preserved braids that whipped violently inside their glass containers, reacting to her bloodline like awakening sirens. The deeper levels opened into a narrow stone hallway. The air grew damp and cold, unnaturally so, and a soft green fog coiled against the ground like living breath. Her braids twitched, sensing something ahead, something older, something that made even her root mother-given senses recoil. The path widened, and there, in the center of a recessed chamber, shaped like a hollowed gourd, a stone table stood beneath a ring of bioluminescent vines. Dozens, maybe hundreds of seeds were carved into its surface in spiraling patterns. Glowing faintly with root code, she recognized the symbol immediately. Ancestral map. A map of the first garden. Her hair pulsed in resonance, each braid heating until it ached. The codes inside her reacted wildly, matching, aligning, calling. She stepped closer, despite herself. Her shadow fell across the stone. Every seed carving ignited at once. Mira stumbled back as a column of green light shot upward from the table, twisting like a vine made of pure memory. The chamber filled with the sound of roots growing. Fast, impossibly fast, and her entire body tensed. Her braids lashed behind her, glowing bright. The light coiled tighter, then extended toward her like a reaching stem. Her pulse stuttered. No, she whispered, not this, not now. but the light touched her forehead anyway. A rush of sensation tore through her. Images, memories, colors she had no names for. Hands braiding hair beside a river of silver leaves. Seeds speaking in lullabies. The root mother's voice, unbroken, whole, commanding her to preserve everything the fellowship sought to steal. Mira staggered to her knees as an ancestral wail filled her mind. They cannot resurrect me through a vessel. They can only destroy what remains. Her breath caught. You knew they would try, Mira choked out, gripping the mossy floor. You knew they would use me. The vine light pulsed. That is why you must run, her heart hammered. I don't know how. You do. Another mechanical clang echoed through the corridor, closer now. The fellowship was nearly upon her. The vine light receded, sinking back into the stone table, leaving the carvings smoldering. Mira pushed herself upright on trembling legs, her braids lifted behind her, not with fear, with direction. They pointed toward a narrow fissure in the back wall, a path she would never have found alone. One she suspected even the fellowship didn't know existed. She moved toward it. The roots parted for her like a curtain. Behind her, the seed chamber began to collapse. Roots tore through the ceiling. Glass shattered. Amber fluid sprayed. The preserved braid in the cylinder shrieked in ancestral code as it finally broke free. Mira didn't look back. She slipped through the fissure and into darkness, guided only by the glow of her braids and the knowledge stored inside them. Whatever waited beyond, she knew one thing with bone-deep certainty. She was no longer a subject. She was no longer a vessel. She was a Bloomwright awakening, and the fellowship had just created the very force they feared most. The fissure closed behind her like a mouth sealing shut. Darkness swallowed her, thick and absolute, until her braids ignited with a dim emerald glow. The light wasn't steady. It flickered like nervous breathing, pulsing in warning rhythms. Mira pressed a palm against the wall beside her. It was damp, warm, and strangely soft, more root than stone. When she pushed harder, the wall quivered under her hand like living flesh. "Where are you taking me?" she whispered. Her braids tugged forward. Forward was the only answer they offered. She followed, each breath shallow, each step cautious on the uneven root-woven ground. The passage bent sharply downward, narrowing until her shoulders brushed both sides. Above her, she could hear the muffled groan of shifting earth, and farther away, the faint metallic echo of the fellowship spreading through the chambers she'd left behind. They would find the broken cylinder. They would find the awakened braid. They would know she'd entered the fissure. She didn't have much time. The tunnel widened suddenly, spilling her into a low cavern filled with a pale green haze that clung close to the ground. Roots hung in tangled curtains from the ceiling, some as thin as hair, others thick as her arm, dipping into small pools of luminescent water that rippled with her presence. Her breath caught. This place wasn't on any map. It wasn't part of the fellowship's diagrams or surveillance feeds. This was a hidden pocket, an ancient one, untouched by human modification. A first garden remnant. Her braids hummed with recognition. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. The roots shifted overhead, dripping luminous sap that splattered across her shoulder with a soft hiss. It didn't burn. Instead, warmth spread beneath her skin, like a heartbeat, syncing with hers. The cavern whispered back, not in words, but in sensations. Welcome. Hurry. Danger. She moved deeper. The haze parted for her, but closed behind her like folding petals. The cavern bent again, spiraling downward in a slope so smooth it had to be grown, not carved. With each step, she felt the pressure of the fellowship pressing into the chambers behind her. She could almost sense their desperation. Vanar's clipped orders, Selen's sharp restraint, the archivists scattering to track her like an elusive specimen. They would chase her. They would corner her. They would try to contain her. unless she disappeared into a place they could not reach. The spiraling tunnel spat her out into a circular chamber. A pool sat at the center, perfectly still, its surface reflecting a green-tinted version of her face, but it wasn't quite a reflection. The image looked older, regal, with braids cascading in patterns more intricate than any mortal hands could weave. The root mother. Mira staggered backward. "No, you're not real." The reflection didn't speak, but the water rippled, circles widening outward like a pulse. Her braids tightened. She understood. This wasn't the root mother's presence, only an echo built into the cavern, a memory seed woven into water, a projection left behind by the ancestor who had shaped this place. "You're showing me the path," Mira murmured. "Not the person." The reflection nodded once. A low rumble rolled through the cavern, and the pool's water began spinning, revealing a stone archway behind it, a doorway she could not see from any other angle. Her braids pointed toward it. Her pulse thundered. This was a one-way path. No return, no second chances. But if she stayed, the fellowship would take her. They would force her awakening into something monstrous. They would twist her lineage into a vessel for their resurrection experiment. She stepped toward the archway. Behind her, distant metal doors slammed open. Voices echoed through the tunnels above. They had found the fissure. Mira inhaled sharply and crossed through the arch. The moment she did, the world changed. The air warmed abruptly. The roots grew thicker, the light brighter, the scent of soil richer. Alive, overwhelming. The tunnel ahead was vast, cathedral-like, with towering walls shaped from interwoven roots the size of tree trunks. The ground glowed faintly beneath her feet, lighting her path with soft, shifting patterns that felt like blooming pulses of thought. Her braids brushed her shoulders. Safe. Here, she was closer to the first garden than she had ever been. But the fellowship had always wanted the first garden. And now, she was moving deeper into its heart. "This is what they want," Mira whispered, stepping forward. "This is what they think they can control." A distant echo answered, not from the fellowship, but from the roots themselves. "They cannot control us." She froze. The voice wasn't external. It bloomed inside her skull, spreading like growing vines. Her knees nearly buckled as the walls of the tunnel shuddered with a sentient ripple of acknowledgement. "We?" she whispered. Her braids lifted softly. "You are one of us now." She fell against the nearest root, steadying herself. A surge of energy rushed through her arm, an ancient presence brushing her thoughts like a vine curling around a trellis. It recognized her, accepted her, marked her. The fellowship had been right about one thing. She was becoming something non-human. Footsteps echoed faintly behind her. The fellowship entering the fissure. Mira straightened, heart pounding. The roots around her tightened protectively, blocking the tunnel behind her with a wall of living wood. It would slow the fellowship. But not forever. Her path lay forward. Her destiny, whatever it was, waited in the deeper chambers. Her braids glowed brighter as ancestral warnings sharpened into direction. Run, daughter seed, toward the heart, toward what they cannot take. Mira clenched her fists, inhaled the scent of ancient soil, and pushed deeper into the living labyrinth, knowing she was crossing into a place no Bloomwright had walked in generations. A place only awakening blood could enter. A place that was beginning to stir in her presence. She was not running away now. She was running toward something. Something vast. Something dangerous. Something hers. 14. the seed chamber chapter separator. The roots guided her downward like a slow descent into an ancient lung. The air thickened with every turn, warmer, richer, almost humid with memory. Mira felt it before she saw anything, a pressure behind her eyes, a low thrumming beneath her ribs, the unmistakable awareness of something vast awakening beneath her feet. It wasn't danger. Not exactly. More like the woods before a storm, charged, expectant, holding its breath. Her braids brushed her shoulders in steady pulses, guiding her through the root-woven corridor. She stopped at the threshold of a chamber so large her breath faltered. The floor sloped away in a wide bowl, ringed by stone and tangled root systems. And at the center, a shape rose from the earth like a sleeping titan, a seed, not like any she had ever seen, not like any seed most humans could imagine. It was the size of a carriage, long, curved, protected by thick, shell-like plates etched with glyphs older than the Fellowship's oldest archives. The surface pulsed faintly, like a slow heartbeat far beneath the shell, a dormant life waiting for a spark. Her breath hitched, the first seed, her voice barely carried in the cavern, muted by the vastness around her. The seed responded anyway. Its glow strengthened for a moment, a brief flare that rippled through the carved lines. Mira stepped closer without meaning to. Her feet felt guided, pulled as if her blood recognized the thing and wished to hurry home. The ground around the seed was covered in a fine dust, pale green and soft as flour. As she stepped into it, the dust responded, lifting itself in faint spirals around her ankles. Not wind, recognition. She walked the slow curve of the chamber until she reached the basin's heart. Her braids trembled like instruments, tuning to an ancient frequency. The glyphs on the seed brightened and dimmed in a slow wave, almost breathing. Then Mira noticed something that made her stomach tighten. At the far side of the chamber, set into the roots and stone, was a metal scaffold, newer, built by human hands. It wrapped partway over the massive seed, no doubt an early attempt by the Fellowship to study or breach it. But the metal frame was twisted, bent in places, warped as though the seed had rejected it with force. She exhaled shakily. They found this place. They tried to open it, and it fought back. Her fingers curled into her palms. The seed wasn't just dormant, it was guarded by the roots themselves. Her mother's glyphs from the recipe book floated through her mind, untranslated threads she had never fully deciphered. Seed that remembers, root that chooses, bloom that decides. She looked back at the massive structure, heart pounding a little faster. It didn't feel like an artifact. It felt like a witness. And when she placed her hand against its shell, its pulse leapt beneath her palm. The world around her cracked open. She didn't fall. The chamber fell away instead. Her knees buckled as light exploded behind her eyes, green gold, scent thick, memory drenched. Her lungs seized. Her vision shattered like glass struck by lightning. She saw everything at once. Bloomwright women braiding memory seeds into their children's hair, ancestors tending massive living gardens beneath luminous skies, hands weaving oils into glyph-coated strands that held entire histories, the root mother stepping through a field of singing vines, her eyes alight with chlorophyll fire, the first seed planted in a cradle of stone, the day it split the earth and connected every Bloomwright to a single shared lineage. Her grandmother grinding luminous petals into healing salves, her great-grandmother speaking with a grove that answered in rustling language. Her mother, laughing, young, hair braided in a style Mira had never seen, kneeling by a seedling that glowed as if touched by starlight. Mira choked on a sob she didn't register forming. The scenes smashed together. History spun around her in fractal loops. Generations overlapped, faces merged, centuries folded like pages turning too fast to read. She saw the founding of the fellowship, originally protectors, not predators, and the moment ambition turned them into something else. She saw every theft of Bloomwright knowledge, every hidden experiment, every betrayal her lineage had survived. Too much, too much, too much. The seed pulsed harder, feeding her everything it had been holding for centuries. She tried to pull her hand away. She couldn't. Roots wrapped around her wrist, gentle but firm as truth. The memory flood deepened until she tasted storm soil and old sunlight on her tongue. Her bones vibrated with ancestral voices, speaking over one another in languages long buried. Her braids ignited in sharp pulses. Her ears rang with 1,000 overlapping heartbeats. She tried to breathe. Instead, she drowned in history. A flash, her mother turning abruptly in a shadowed kitchen, whispering into her daughter's hair, "Not yet, Mira. Not until the roots call." Another flash, her grandmother hiding a glowing seed in a locked chest, hands trembling as fellowship shadows pass the window. Another, an ancestor screaming when their memory was stripped by the price of a gift. The seed wasn't giving her a vision. It was downloading an entire civilization into her skull. She buckled, collapsing to her knees. Her fingers clawed at the root-covered ground. Tears spilled freely, hot against her skin. She couldn't see the chamber anymore. Only timelines collapsing into each other, the way roots intertwined in the earth. Inseparable, infinite, alive. "Stop," she gasped. "I can't. It's too much. I'm not." A voice answered her, not the root mother. Something older, deeper. A collective whisper that reverberated through the seed into her bloodstream. "You asked to know." Her body shook violently. "Not all at once. We do not choose the pace of truth. You do." The seed's glow shifted, slowing, dimming. Her breath returned in thin, unsteady threads. The roots unwound from her wrist. Her hand slipped free, and she fell backward, head spinning, chest heaving as the visions fragmented into drifting embers. When the world finally steadied, the chamber slowly reassembled around her. The massive seed loomed overhead. The dust settled around her knees in soft spirals. Her braids sagged, drained, the oils within them cooling like embers losing flame. Mira blinked hard. Sweat clung to her skin. Her heartbeat scraped at her ribs like a trapped bird. She tried to stand and failed. The seed had shown her too much, but she understood one thing with terrible clarity. The fellowship wasn't guessing. They weren't theorizing. They weren't probing blindly. They knew. They had known for generations. Her bloodline was the key. And they planned to feed that key into this seed until it awakened the root mother, not through natural lineage, but through engineered resurrection. One they could direct, contain, harvest. A chill wrapped around her spine. "This is why they wanted me," she whispered. "Not just for what I can do, but for what I can open." Her braids stirred in a trembling shiver. Not open. Unleash. She flinched at the word. What does that mean? What would come out if this seed wakes wrong? Silence thickened in the chamber. Then, faint, distant, echoing, she heard footsteps. Fellowship boots, metal clasps, shallow breaths. They had reached the layer above. They were descending. They were coming for her. Mira forced herself upright. Her legs shook. Her skull throbbed. Her memories swirled in unstable loops. pulling threads from centuries at random. But she stood anyway, because if the fellowship reached her while she was weak, they would take her by force. And the seed behind her pulsed, as if listening, as if waiting, as if preparing for whoever reached it next. Mira stepped between the seed and the tunnel entrance, breathing hard, willing her body to steady. "Not them," she whispered. "You don't want them." The glyphs along the seed's shell flickered in agreement. She swallowed. "They want to use me, use my lineage to force you open. They want to bind whatever's inside, control it, control you." The seed dimmed, almost in sorrow. Control is a human fear, not a root's. The sound of boots grew louder. Mira turned toward the shadowed corridor, her pulse racing, her throat tight, her senses sharp enough to cut skin. The fellowship was almost here. She pressed her palm against the seed's shell again, not to see more, not to drown, but to steady herself. "I won't let them," she whispered. Her braids tightened around her shoulders, pulsing with agreement. The seed glowed warm beneath her hand. Then the first silhouettes appeared at the chamber's edge, lanterns raised, weapons glinting, their faces lit by the ghostly green radiance of the seed chamber. And Mira stood ready. She kept one palm on the massive seed, letting its pulse settle into her skin. It felt like leaning into the heartbeat of a slumbering titan, one that recognized her blood as kin and her fear as irrelevant. The chamber's glow settled into a deeper gold, warmer now, almost protective. Her braids swayed behind her as though moved by a breeze that didn't exist, strands whispering the encoded warnings Root Mother had woven into her lineage. She stepped closer, placing her other hand beside the first. The seed's surface rippled, a slow exhale, and the visions rose again, not as overwhelming storms, but as braided threads humming in parallel. Her ancestors stood at the edges of her mind, bloomsmiths, healers, chemists, gardeners whose hands had shaped forests and cured plagues. Their faces shimmered like lanterns submerged in water. "I need more," Mira whispered. "Show me everything." The seed responded with a low thrum, and the chamber darkened around her. Patterns of ancestral memory spiraled inward, forming a living corridor of glyphs and half-remembered voices. She could feel their stories pressing forward, eager, urgent. They had been waiting for her, for someone who carried the last complete Bloomwright braid. Her breath stilled. The voices braided themselves into clarity. "You stand at the hinge of eras. The fellowship thinks it can command us. It cannot. But if they awaken us without you, all will burn." Mira swallowed, throat tight. "So what do I do?" Another pulse, more deliberate. "Open what they cannot. Reclaim what they stole." The seed has waited for its rightful keeper. Touch deeper. Bind your braid to the core. Her fingers trembled. "If I do that, what happens to me?" A long, sorrowful resonance. Every Bloomwright gave something away. "You will too, but you will choose your price, not them." She hesitated, pulse quickening. Her memories had already thinned. Faces blurred at the edges of her thoughts. Her mother's face was gone. That loss hummed like a hollow note she couldn't stop hearing. How much more could she risk? Before she could pull away, the chamber lights flared, flooding the space with sterile white. Mira yanked her hands back. Footsteps echoed. A shadow cut through the light. Dr. Haldon stepped into view, flanked by two guards wearing vine-threaded suits that tightened as they moved. His glasses glinted like polished bone. His expression was too calm, too certain. "Mira," he said softly, "you weren't supposed to find this place yet." Her braids tightened like clenched fists against her back. "You've been using my family," she said, voice shaking, "studying us like archived ingredients. You planned all of this." Haldon gave a slight nod. "Of course we did. Your lineage was never lost to us. The Bloomwright potential is rare, beautiful, and finally after many attempts, concentrated in someone capable of awakening the core seed. Mira took a step back, placing herself between Halden and the seed. You want to resurrect Root Mother, not for healing, for control. He didn't deny it. Imagine, he said, eyes unfurling with ambition, a Root Mother bound to human will, bound to science, bound to progress. We could terraform wastelands in hours, cure every disease engineered from the before times, feed the world, and rule it, Mira whispered. Halden's silence confirmed everything. The guards moved forward a step, each raising a containment harness etched with suppression sigils. Mira's braids lashed with a spark of ancestral heat. You won't lay a hand on me, she said. Halden sighed lightly, the sound almost mournful. I truly hoped you would cooperate. The seed responds only to your bloodline. That makes you both essential and replaceable. The guards lunged. Mira threw her hands forward, not fully sure what would happen. The room erupted in a surge of green brilliance. Roots curled from the floor like unspooled ropes, weaving around her arms and launching outward. The guards stumbled as the ground beneath them churned into a snarl of twisting vines. Halden stumbled back, shock cracking through his composure. Mira, stop, he shouted. You don't understand what you're awakening. I understand enough, she said. Her pulse synced with the seed again, not through touch, but through recognition. It was awake now. It knew her fear. It knew her fury. It knew her lineage had arrived to claim it. The seed throbbed with a sound like a heartbeat magnified through the roots of an entire forest. Visions poured across the chamber walls. Ancient Bloomwrights weaving cities from trees, healing plagues with plant bonds Mira had no names for, standing against empires that tried to harvest them. One final message pressed against Mira's mind, urgent, determined. If you bind with us, we rise, but you will lose something precious. Choose swiftly. They're coming. More guards spilled into the chamber. Halden barked orders, frantic now. Mira curled her fists. She thought of Root Mother warning her. She thought of losing her mother's face. She thought of every living thing screaming in these laboratories. Then she stepped toward the seed. Its glow deepened, waiting. I choose, Mira whispered. The braids at her back lifted, every strand burning with ancestral code. She pressed both palms to the seed, and the seed chamber roared awake. Light burst from the seed in a widening ring, a silent shockwave that rippled through glass, vine metal machinery, and even the air itself. The chamber trembled as if some great buried engine began to turn for the first time in centuries. The vines that held the ceiling chimed like plucked strings, resonating with a tone both triumphant and grieving. Mira staggered but kept her hands on the seed. The energy didn't strike her. It poured through her, threading into every curl, every braid, every place her lineage had left its quiet fingerprints. Her vision blurred, then sharpened with impossible clarity. She could see the guard's muscles tightening before they moved, could see Halden's heartbeat throbbing at his throat, could see the faint glimmer of the plant tech hidden in the lab walls trying to recoil from her. The seed recognized her as its chosen keeper. A lattice of golden glyphs spiraled around her arms. Her braids lifted like a crown of living roots, each strand burning softly with memory. The warning codes Root Mother had woven into her hair unfurled into readable script, revealing instructions Mira felt rather than understood. Anchor, merge, do not break. The price is the price. Halden shouted over the rising hum. Stop the resonance, get her off it. If she fully merges, we lose control of. A vine whipped out from the floor and coiled around his ankle, dragging him back. He hit the ground hard, breath punched from his lungs. The other guards tried firing tranquilizers, but the chamber itself rejected the attack. The darts dissolved mid-air, blossoming into harmless petals before they could reach her. Mira's heartbeat fused with the seed's pulse. A new vision surged. She stood on soil older than the fellowship, older than the institute, older than the entire marsh belt. Around her, the first garden unfurled in towering spirals of flora that shimmered between colors. Trees with hollow trunks, full of luminous sap, bent toward her, greeting her. Flowers the size of shields pulsed with their own intelligence. Wind rippled through strange fronds that whispered harmonies she almost understood. Then she saw them, her ancestors, walking, tending, weaving their hair into living archives, their braids swayed with secrets, maps, formulas, and chants. They kept the first garden alive by remembering it. The vision sharpened, a looming shadow, a betrayal. The fellowship's earliest founders severing roots they didn't comprehend. An explosion of green fire. Root Mother sacrificing her body to seal the first garden away. A scattering of the Bloomwright bloodline so the knowledge couldn't be taken. The scene split open and Mira was pulled through the gathered memories into a moment she had never lived and yet recognized. Her mother, young and fierce, hiding a tiny seed wrapped in cloth. The same seed Mira now touched. Her mother whispered to it, to her, to the future. One day, child, you will hear what we could not. Mira choked on a breath. The seed pulsed with grief. Another memory crashed into her. Root Mother herself, towering and half ethereal, hair like woven rivers of light. Her eyes were earth fire. Her voice filled Mira's bones. They will try to root me into their machines. They will try to force me to bloom for them alone. You must wake me correctly, or I return as ruin. Mira gasped as the vision shattered. She was back in the seed chamber, pulse pounding, sweat cold along her spine. The seed under her palms glowed brighter, responding to her rising panic. Halden, struggling to his feet, croaked. Mira, listen to me. You don't understand what that seed contains. It isn't just memory. It's Root Mother's dormant consciousness. If you awaken her outside our parameters, she'll kill us all. She'll kill you. Mira's braids crackled with heat. If your parameters are cages, maybe destruction is exactly what she promised. Halden's face paled. You're making a catastrophic mistake. Maybe, Mira said, voice steadying, but it'll be mine. The seed pulsed again. It wanted direction, wanted choice. Wanted a keeper who wouldn't bind its mother like a specimen in a jar. Guards rushed her again, this time with root shears. Monstrous devices with serrated leaves meant to cut through plant constructs. Mira felt their intent before their boots hit the floor. Her braids snapped outward, forming a halo of defensive threads. When the shears swung down, they struck a barrier of hardened root light that exploded on impact, throwing the guards back. Halden shielded his face from the blast, eyes wide. What are you becoming? Mira breathed out shakily as the chamber's glow intensified. A Bloomwright reclaiming what you stole. The seed convulsed under her palms, light flashing in frantic waves. Something beneath its surface shifted, a stirring like a creature waking from an ancient hibernation. One more whisper pressed into her skull. Bloom or burn. Choose now. Mira closed her eyes. She pictured Root Mother's sorrow, her mother's warnings, her own scattered memories, the fellowship's cruelty, the plants screaming in the labs, the world outside the institute starving for real healing. Then she whispered, I choose to awaken you. The seed split open, not violently, but like a flower deciding the dark was no longer worth its silence. Light spilled from the fracture, rising in soft ribbons that wound around Mira's arms, her neck, her braids. The chamber went silent, except for the low, resonant hum of rebirth. Halden screamed for backup. But the seed chamber belonged to her now. Mira leaned closer to the opening seed, bracing herself for whatever emerged next. The light inside thickened, taking shape. A silhouette stood within it, and Mira felt her heartbeat stop. The silhouette in the seed's light drew itself together with agonizing deliberation, as though every flicker of illumination was a bone knitting, every slow contraction of glow a tendon forming. The brilliance softened, resolving into the shape of a towering figure, marked by vines that twisted like living script across her limbs. Her hair cascaded in long, luminous strands that writhed gently like underwater currents, braids woven with ancestral light. Root Mother. Not the whisper, not the vision. A presence wearing form again. The chamber bowed under the weight of her arrival. Leaves shriveled and then regenerated. The bioluminescent moss along the walls flickered wildly, each patch bending toward her like subjects recognizing a long-lost queen. Even the machinery stuttered, gears seizing, wires sparking, technology instinctively recoiling from its opposite. Mira tried to back away, but her feet rooted to the ground, held by a force that was neither vine nor fear. Root Mother's eyes opened. Deep green shot through with amber, the colors of storms rolling through forests. Her gaze landed on Mira, and something like relief, aching, ancient relief, passed over her face. Daughter seed, Root Mother said. Her voice resonated through the chamber floor, up Mira's bones, into the spaces where her memories frayed. You have woken me. Mira swallowed hard. Her mouth was too dry for words. Behind her, Halden's strangled whisper broke the silence. This is impossible. The seed wasn't supposed to form a full vessel. It wasn't stable enough. Root Mother turned her head toward him, and every plant tech machine in the room shrieked in pain, as though her attention itself short-circuited them. You tried to birth me in metal, she said. Metal is hungry. You do not feed hunger with roots. The vines near Halden's feet lifted and uncoiled, but Root Mother didn't strike him. Not yet. Her focus returned to Mira. Mira finally found her voice. If I woke you wrong, you woke me true, Root Mother said, stepping forward. Her feet did not disturb the soil. Instead, patches of moss bloomed under each step as if racing to greet her. The others before you tried to force bloom through violence. You offered memory. A tremor of pride threaded her voice. Mira felt it settle in her chest, warm and heavy. Root Mother lifted a hand and touched Mira's cheek. The touch was cool, soft, fragrant with old earth and night blossoms. But you paid prices you did not yet understand. But memory can be grown back differently, woven new. If you survive, what comes next? Before Mira could ask what that meant, the chamber shook violently. Sparks showered from an upper walkway. Alarms blared. Reinforcements rushed in, scientists, guards, technicians, forming a semicircle around the central platform. Halden found his courage in their presence. He staggered upright, pointing at Mira with frantic authority. She is the catalyst. Separate her from the entity. Use the root shears. Full charge. Root Mother inhaled deeply. The plants near the entrance curled inward, thickening into barriers. They still think they command harvests. Mira tensed. They won't stop. They cannot. Root Mother's glow intensified. You hold the map of my memories in your hair. They will unweave your braids to read me. Cold dread rippled through Mira. She remembered the shears, the scalpels, the curiosity in their eyes. Root Mother looked down at her. Do you fear them? Mira clenched her jaw. I fear failing my mother. Then listen. Root Mother leaned close, and the vines in the chamber swayed toward her words. You must become what they fear, not for violence, for survival. The guards charged, shears crackling, boots pounding. Rootmother raised her arms. A wave of shimmering green light burst from her like a pulse of the earth itself, rushing outward. The guards were lifted off their feet and hurled back as if caught in a storm wind. Machinery buckled inward, vines splitting through metal seams. Glass domes exploded into showers of crystalline spores. Yet amid the destruction, a single path opened behind Mira. A corridor formed of glowing vine walls, leading deeper into the facility. Go, Rootmother commanded. Mira hesitated. What about you? Rootmother smiled, but it was a sorrowful, world-weary thing. I walk a different path. I will draw their eyes. You must carry the lineage forward. Her hands touched Mira's shoulders, firm and grounding. What I am now will not last long. The vessel is incomplete. I burn too brightly for one shell. Mira's heart clenched. Then let me help you. Take more of me, my memories, my strength. Anything. No. Rootmother's grip tightened. A mother does not grow by consuming her child. Before Mira could argue, Rootmother turned toward the chaos. Her glow blossomed into a brilliant storm. Vines snapping into armor around her form. She radiated power that was breathtaking and terrifying all at once. The guards tried again to advance, but she met them with a roar that shook the entire chamber. An eruption of green fire in a world built of sterile walls. Mira took one step toward the vine-carved corridor, then another. Her braids hummed with urgency. The path closed behind her as she ran, sealing her off from the seed chamber and the battle unfolding within. The final sound she heard before the vines sealed the last opening was Rootmother's voice, loud, fierce, unbound, bellowing a command Mira could not yet understand. Then silence. The corridor lit itself gently, guiding Mira deeper into the facility. Every step carried her farther from safety, farther from Rootmother, deeper into the truth she had been born to uncover. And somewhere behind her, inside the collapsing seed chamber, Rootmother burned brighter than any sun the Fellowship had ever tried to cage. 15. The hair unbraiding, chapter separator. Mira ran until the vines guiding her dissolved back into the walls, until the humming in her braids softened from urgency into something steadier, older, almost ceremonial. The air here felt different, less clinical, less metallic. It smelled of old soil and dried petals, the faint perfume of a garden that had never seen sunlight. She slowed. This room wasn't part of the official maps. She could feel that. It felt sunken, hidden beneath even the seed chamber. The walls curved inward, like the inside of a rib cage. At the center lay a small pedestal of woven roots, and resting atop it was a seed, a smaller version of the monstrous one in the chamber above, but still large enough to fill her palms. Her breath stuttered. She felt drawn and warned away all at once. The hum in her braids intensified. The seed pulsed once, as though sensing her presence. Something ancient unfurled within her. Unbraid. The command didn't come from the Rootmother. It came from her own lineage, rising in waves beneath her skin. Mira stepped closer to the pedestal. Her hands shook as she reached for her braids. Each strand felt warm, vibrating with encoded memory. She had never unbraided them completely before. She had always feared what she might lose. But she feared captivity more. She feared becoming the vessel they tried to carve her into. She feared forgetting everything her mother had ever whispered to her. Her fingers touched the first braid. The chamber's air thickened, warm as breath. She unwrapped the first segment. A memory slid free. Not one she lost, one she had never seen. Her grandmother, young, standing in a circle of sickly plants. Her hands glowed faintly green. She whispered a song Mira couldn't understand, and the plants straightened, their leaves sharpening into clean points. Mira gasped. The image vanished. The unbraided strand glimmered in her hand, like spun sunlight. She reached for another braid, unwrapped it slowly. This time, a warning throbbed up her arm. When the fellowship asks for unity, they mean obedience. When they ask for harmony, they mean silence. When they ask for your body, they mean to bury you inside their roots. Mira staggered. That truth didn't feel like a memory. It felt like something carved into her marrow. She exhaled and unwrapped a third braid. A spell slid loose. A knot pattern designed to break containment fields. A luminous map of symbols appeared in the air before dissolving back into the strand. Her pulse quickened. She wove that unbraided strand around the smaller seed. The seed warmed instantly, absorbing the memory spell. The glow deepened. She understood. Each strand wasn't just history. Each was a key, a weapon, a warning her ancestors never trusted the world to hear. She unwrapped the fourth braid. A whisper filled her ear, her mother's voice. But not one Mira remembered. If they ever reach for your mind, braid tighter, daughter. When you're ready to break their grip, unbraid. Memory is not lost. It changes shape. Like roots. Like you. Her throat constricted. She pressed her forehead against the strand, holding on to the warmth of that voice for a heartbeat longer, before winding the hair around the seed. The seed pulsed again, brighter. She continued, braid after braid, memory after memory, warning after warning, spell after spell. With each unwrapped strand, the air grew heavier with power. Roots slithered across the walls, awakened by the cascading memories. The floor warmed beneath her feet, as though something beneath the chamber stirred in recognition. By the 10th braid, Mira was swaying. By the 15th, sweat dripped down her temple. By the 20th, she felt faint. And still, she kept going. Some braids revealed glimpses of Bloomwright ceremonies long forbidden. Others revealed faces of ancestors who looked like her, eyes burning with plant light, hands shaping the world from soil and breath. One braid held a memory of her mother, crying over a closed book, whispering, "I will hide her from you. I will hide her from all of you." Another braid held a spell Mira did not recognize, but instinctively knew should be used only once, and only when escape was no longer possible. She wrapped each unbraided strand around the seed. The seed grew warmer. The glow intensified. The air hummed in a thick, vibrating chord that felt like the ghost of a heartbeat. Finally, Mira reached the last braid, the one closest to her temple, the one her mother had always braided herself. Her hands trembled. Her breath shivered. She unwrapped it slowly, reverently, letting each coil loose like a confession unraveling. The chamber brightened. A memory surged out, powerful, blinding. Her mother holding Mira as an infant, whispering a name Mira had forgotten she ever had. A name spoken only once, meant to be locked inside her hair until she was ready to claim it. The memory faded. The strand fell free. Mira wound the final piece of her hair around the seed. The seed shook. Then it cracked, softly, like a shell kissed open by dawn. A thin root unfurled, brushing against Mira's palm. She inhaled sharply as warmth spread through her hand, up her arm, across her chest. The seed accepted her, and in doing so, it changed. The glow deepened into a thrumming pulse. The cradle of roots around the pedestal tightened protectively. The air shifted, anticipatory, sacred. Mira knelt, one hand cradling the seed, her loosened hair falling around her shoulders like a storm of unspooled sunlight. She whispered the only words she could manage, "Grow with me." The seed answered with a slow, resonant pulse. And somewhere above, in the chaos of the collapsing laboratories, Root Mother felt it. The ritual of unbraiding had begun. And Mira, hair loosened, memories set free, lineage unlocked, was becoming something the fellowship could never prepare for, never contain, never command. She was becoming her own bloom. She was becoming her own bloom. The thought shimmered through Mira as if it were spoken not in her mind, but in the warm space just behind her ribs, where the seed's pulse now echoed her own. The chamber breathed with her. Threads of pollen gold drifted in a slow spiral, bright enough to sting her watering eyes. She kept unbraiding, thumb and forefinger sliding down each strand until the curl separated into its original filament. Her hair fell in gentle coils around her knees, light as husks. A memory slipped loose with the next thread. Not a vision this time, but a feeling. Wind on her face, not from any place she recognized. It carried the scent of scorch grass and a note of flute song, played by someone she loved fiercely. Though the face refused to rise, the grief in it was sharp enough to draw breath from her. The strand in her hand glowed briefly, then dimmed. "You're not breaking," the seed whispered. "You're unmaking the bindings they left inside you." She wished she could ask who they were, but the ritual demanded silence. The chamber felt it, holding its breath with her. Her fingers trembled near her temple as she worked the next braid loose. Another coil unwound, releasing a warning so old it felt like someone else's nightmare. She saw carved silhouettes kneeling around a seed, not unlike the one before her. Their shadows were stretched long on stone. But something was wrong. Their faces were hollowed, their mouths sewn shut with vines they'd grown themselves, their hands shaking as they tried to hold the seed steady. One by one, the vines snapped, and the shadows buckled inward, consumed by the same bloom they had tried to force awake. Mira flinched so violently that her knees skidded on the floor. The vision dissolved, but its chill clung to her. "That will not be you," the seed murmured, voice like a small ember insisting on warmth. "You unbraid from freedom, not fear." She swallowed dryly and kept going. As more braids unraveled, her scalp tingled, then hummed. It felt like a soft crown had been lifted from her, invisible weight gone. Her thoughts felt strangely spacious. Each strand she freed drifted through the air, weightless, before drifting down into her lap. They did not lie like hair anymore. They curled like living threads, faintly luminous. She gathered the strands gently, as the ritual demanded, and wound them around the seed. The seed accepted them eagerly, drinking in their shimmer until veins of rose gold spread across its shell. The sound it made was a slow heartbeat, awakening after centuries of sleep. "Just a little more," the seed coaxed. "You're almost unbound enough to hear me fully." She worked faster, stripping braid after braid, exposing long, freed curls. Each release brought a surge of magic that ran from her scalp to her ankles in a bright spill. Her breath quickened. Something primal pushed upward inside her. not as memory or warning, but as recognition. The Bloomwrights had never wanted her to know she could do this. No, more than that. They had crafted braids to keep her from it, not as decoration, not as tradition, but as a lattice of containment. That realization struck like a stone tossed into her chest. Ripples of betrayal ringing outward. Another thread unraveled. This time she saw the hands that braided her childhood hair. Not a mother, not a caretaker. Hands gloved in ritual cloth, binding spells into the strands with patient cruelty. Every twist was a ward against some truth she had not been allowed to touch. Anger scorched up through her so swift, she gasped. Good, the seed answered. Some blossoms require fire to open. Her fingers flew. She ripped free the next braid without ceremony. Light flared at the exposed strand, as if the spell that once lived there screamed its release. The chamber answered with a tremor that rattled dust from the ceiling. Old murals quivered like startled birds. She tore loose another braid, and another. Her hair fell now in a storm around her. A dark river shot through with spell light. The air thickened with it, dense with the scent of sap and old thunder. Her heartbeat aligned with the seed. Their pulses struck the same rhythm, each beat carrying an unspoken vow. When the final braid loosened, her hair spilled free completely. A wave of heat rolled off her body. Mira felt taller somehow, like her spine had been lengthened by truth. The seed chamber brightened in response, petals of light unfurling across the walls. Her freed strands rose from her lap and spiraled around the seed on their own, weaving a cradle of glimmering filaments. You've done it, the seed breathed, voice clear at last. Now I can speak in full. Mira swallowed once, steadying herself. She felt bare in a way deeper than skin, as though the chamber saw the map of her life etched within her. Then tell me, she whispered, what was locked inside me? The seed pulsed, a warning, a memory, and a truth they feared. Its glow sharpened, bathing the chamber in soft radiance. You are not the last Bloomwright, Mira. You are the first of the ones who broke free. Her breath hitched, but she did not look away. The seed leaned toward her, resting against the hollow of her hands, warm, trusting. And now, it said, I will show you why they feared what your unbraiding would awaken. The chamber dimmed. The seed opened. Light unfurled from its seam like a slow exhale of dawn, spilling over Mira's palms and pooling onto the floor in a ribboning tide. The glow wasn't harsh, but it carried a weight that made her spine lift straight, as if her bones recognized something her mind had not yet named. The chamber leaned into the light. Ancient murals brightened, relieved of centuries of dust, by a magic that remembered its purpose. Inside the seed, something turned. Not a creature, not a bloom, something older than either. It shimmered with the brilliance of uncut memory, a living scroll folded in firelight. Mira, it said, not with language, but with understanding. This is the truth they hid in your braids. A chamber darkened around the growing light. Shadows clung to the far walls as the seed projected a living vision, weaving it into the air with strands of her own unbraided hair. The first image rose, a Bloomwright child standing beneath a sky filled with drifting pollen stars. At first, Mira thought it was her. Same posture, same quiet gaze, but the face sharpened into someone else's, an ancestor, perhaps even the first Bloomwright herself. Her hair floated unbound, a dark halo, touched with spell light. Around the child stood elders with long, braided hair. The braids moved like wary serpents, each one glowing with its own containment spell. The elders' mouths held soft smiles that did not reach their eyes. They wrapped the child's hair into its first braid, winding limitation into each twist, whispering the old doctrine. Only the bound Bloomwright can be controlled. Only the bound Bloomwright can serve. Only the bound Bloomwright can remain safe. Their voices faded, The child's light dimmed. The seed's glow shuddered in Mira's hands. That was the beginning of the lattice, it whispered. The tradition of binding hair came long before your birth, before your teachers, before your mother's mother. Every braid was a cage crafted from fear. Mira clenched her jaw. Her scalp still hummed from the unbraiding, tender and alert. The freed strands around the seed tightened protectively. The vision shifted. Now Mira saw a group of young Bloomwrights, each with braided hair that writhed subtly with old spells. They knelt around a seed much larger than hers, praying over it. Their braids flickered. Their faces were pale with strain. The seed did not open. Their bindings held them back, severing the connection needed for true awakening. No bloom can rise from fear, the seed murmured. No magic thrives inside a cage. Mira felt her breath drum quick and heavy. The truth crystallized inside her. The unbraiding ritual was not forbidden because it was dangerous. It was forbidden because it was liberating. The seed brightened, dissolving the vision with a sweep of rose-gold light. Now, Mira stood in the chamber again, but the air had thickened with expectation. Her freed strands completed their spiraling weave, braiding not her, but the seed. They bound it gently, a cradle made not of containment, but of connection. "You have done what your ancestors could not," the seed said. Its voice carried layered harmonies now, like many seeds speaking through it at once. "You have unmade the lattice. You have returned your magic to its first shape." Mira lowered her head, breath steadying. "What happens now?" The seed pulsed, sharp and sure. "Now," it answered, "I bloom with you." A second seam split the seed, light unfurling in layered petals until they opened like a radiant flower. At its core burned a small, spinning ember the color of first sunrise. The ember rose, drifting to Mira's chest, hovering just above her sternum. Her breath caught. Its heat was gentle but immense. "This is your inheritance," the seed said. "A fragment of the first bloom. It recognizes your unbound magic. It chooses you." As the ember melted into her, Mira felt something reweave inside her. Not a braid, not a binding, but a path, a constellation of possibility. Her veins brightened with soft gold, then steadied. Her hair lifted, caught in a current of unseen wind, each freed strand shimmering with new language. The chamber bowed with light. The murals shed their dust completely, revealing the earliest Bloomwright sigils in fresh color. Mira rose to her feet, the seed's empty shell falling open like the cracked shell of something reborn. She placed her hand on her heart. The ember pulsed beneath it, her pulse echoing back. Slowly, she lifted her newly unbound hair, feeling its weightless strength. It fell around her like a cloak of liberated magic. The seed's last whisper curled against her ear. "You are no longer the girl they shaped. You are the bloom they feared. Go now, the world is waiting to see you unbound." Mira stepped out of the seed's cradle, the chamber trembling as if in reverence. She inhaled deeply, tasting the newness in the air, the shimmering rise of possibility. She walked toward the exit. Her unbraided hair flowed behind her like a living script, rewriting itself with every step. Chapter 15 closed on the soft, undeniable truth blooming beneath her ribs. She had freed the seed, and in doing so, she had freed herself. 16, the first garden reborn, chapter separator. Mira stood at the threshold of the seed chamber, her unbound hair stirring as if stirred by a wind only she could hear. The ember of the first bloom, now nestled deep within her chest, beat in time with her heart. Each pulse echoed down her arms and into her fingers, a gentle thrum that tasted like memory and thunder. The path to the first garden had always been sealed beneath the fellowship's halls, a vault beneath a vault, a wound beneath a scar. They had buried it under concrete, laboratories, files, and lies. They believed its door would never open again. They had not accounted for Mira being unbraided. She knelt on the cold floor, palms flat, spreading her fingers across the stone. The chamber's quiet tightened around her. Tiny motes of dust hung still, as if holding their breath. Her hair lifted, strand by strand, as though listening. "Ancestors," she whispered. Her voice rang with the tremor of many voices, hidden inside her scalp and carried in the loose strands cascading around her shoulders. "Show me the opening." The ember flared. Heat shot down her spine and exploded into her palms. The floor cracked. Not a small crack, a deep, resonant splitting, like the stone itself remembered it wasn't stone at all, but fossilized root. Mira pressed harder. Her fingers glowed, a brightness which blurred their shape. She could feel the ancient earth beneath the laboratory foundation beginning to stir, stretching like something long asleep. A voice, not hers, rose through her arms. "We planted the first garden before cities had names. We remember every root. Call us back." Her scalp tingled fiercely. Her hair billowed, strands writing sigils in the air. "I call you," she said, the words spilling from a place older than her throat. The chamber trembled. A fracture raced outward from beneath her hands, splitting the smooth floor into widening ribbons. The sound echoed like a giant heartbeat, cracking through the building. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then the first root broke through. It erupted from the stone with a sound like wet thunder, thick as Mira's leg, its bark glowing with pale fire. It twisted upward, tasting the air, sensing her. More roots followed, thin, thick, spiraling in impossible geometric motion. They broke through the floor in a frenzy of awakened memory. Mira gasped as the voices surged through her. "We are the garden. We are the remembered earth. We rise at your call." Her body trembled, but she held steady, guiding the roots with her breath. Her palms hovered over them, light spilling from her skin. The ground beneath the fellowship was shaking now, their machines, their archives, their stolen artifacts rattling. Mira rose slowly to her feet. "Come through," she whispered. The chamber groaned like a living creature. Then the roots widened their fissures until the stone floor fell away entirely, revealing a vast, glowing abyss beneath. Soil rich as night, light blooming in bioluminescent spirals far below. Ancient vines shifting like serpents in deep water. The first garden, waiting, alive, and furious. A column of green fire rose from the opening, spiraling around Mira like a coronation. Her hair caught the light, strands curling into new shapes, absorbing and translating the voices rising from the depths. Her veins became conduits, her skin glowed. The ember in her chest flared, a heartbeat too big for the body holding it. Above her, alarms blared, footsteps thundered in the hallways. The fellowship was coming. The roots responded first. They exploded upward through the cracks, racing toward the laboratory walls. Vines thickened, walls crumbled, leaves unfurled in bursts of neon green fury. Flora that had gone extinct thousands of years ago rose like memories given form. Mira lifted one hand. The plants obeyed, not blindly, not as weapons, but as kin answering a call. They surged around her, a living shield. She stepped toward the opening in the floor, her feet finding natural pathways woven by the roots. She looked down into the glowing depths of the first garden, the birthplace of her bloodline. "Open the path," she whispered. The garden answered with a low, earth-deep vibration, and the abyss expanded into a staircase made of living wood. She took the first step. Every ancestor in her scalp sang. The roots roared. The fellowship screamed in the halls behind her. And Mira walked into the first garden reborn. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the air thickened, warm as breath and dense with the perfume of sap, soil, and something like memory made humid. Light pooled in shifting colors, green, gold, amber, pouring through the colossal canopy overhead. The trees rose impossibly high, their trunks spiraling like unstopped time, their leaves whispering in languages she could half understand. Every step felt like sinking deeper into a story her ancestors had whispered but never finished telling. The wooden steps beneath her flexed, adjusting to her weight, guiding her downward into the living cathedral. Vines slid across one another to form rails. Roots pulsed with dim light under the soil, like veins carrying some ancient heartbeat. She inhaled, and the garden inhaled with her. She exhaled, and thousands of leaves sighed. A path unrolled beneath her feet, woven from interlaced roots that rose from the ground and braided themselves with the same patterns as her grandmother's hands, her mother's hands. The earth trembled with recognition, murmured a voice, woven from rustling petals and tremoring bark. Mira's spine tightened. Root mother. The trees answered. The vines rippled. The soil swelled. A great bloom unfurled ahead, 10 feet tall, petals rimmed with faint gold. Its center glowed with soft, green fire. Not the vine form Mira had glimpsed in the marsh. This one was immense, blooming from a nexus of thousands of tangled roots. Her body was the memory of a woman sculpted in living wood, arms made of braided branches, skin veined with chlorophyll, hair a wild crown of flowering tendrils. Her face was ancient, carved by seasons and storms, and alive with sorrow older than the fellowship's entire existence. Mira froze. Something inside her chest, the ember, bowed. The root mother stepped forward, and the earth rose to carry her weight, reverent. Flowers bent, leaves stilled. "You have opened the path," the root mother said, her voice a chord of wind, water, and rootache. "After so many cycles fruitless, you came woven with loss and blooming with courage." Mira swallowed hard. "They want to use you. They want to reconstruct you. I know." The root mother's eyes glowed brighter. "They sought to birth me in a body they could bind, severed from the soil that remembers me. They planned to use me to do it. You carry what they never understood." The root mother's gaze lowered to Mira's chest. "The ember of the first bloom is not power. It is kinship. Without kinship, the garden withers. And so would I." The branches making up her hands reached gently for Mira. "Come forward." Mira hesitated only a heartbeat before stepping into the span of that ancient reach. The root mother cupped Mira's face in wooden palms that radiated impossible warmth. "You have been unbraided," the root mother whispered. "Yet your strands still hold." Mira's voice cracked. "I lost memories. I keep losing them. Every garden requires compost," the root mother said softly. "Memory feeds power, and power feeds memory. What you lose becomes part of the soil beneath you." "But I needed them." "You needed what they would grow into." Mira blinked back stinging tears. The root mother brushed a tender thumb of smooth bark along her cheek. "Your mother knew this path would cost you. She left you seeds to ease the soil. I want them back," Mira whispered. "All the faces, all the moments. You cannot reclaim what you offered," the root mother said, voice dimming with an ancient grief. "But you can plant anew." Before Mira could respond, the ground beneath them shook. The tremor carried fear, no, alarm, from the roots themselves. The root mother's head snapped upward. They are breaching the threshold. The fellowship. Somewhere above, they were fighting their way through the vines Mira had called, breaking, cutting, forcing entry. The root mother lifted a hand, and the canopy shuddered. Roots spiraled upward, racing toward the surface like living spears. But the fellowship had spent decades studying Bloomwright lore. They had tools sharpened against her. "It will not hold them long," the root mother said, "and they will not hesitate once they enter." Mira clenched her fists. "Then what do I do?" "You are the bridge. No root mother can rise without a daughter of the first garden to anchor her. And no daughter can survive without the garden awakened." Mira felt the ember flare. The heat raced down her limbs. Her vision brightened until each plant had an aura, a pulse, a voice. "I will guide you," the root mother said, "but you must choose to root or to run." "Root," Mira whispered without hesitation. A soft smile cracked the root mother's bark. "Then bend toward me." Mira stepped closer. The root mother placed her wooden brow against Mira's forehead. Light flooded between them, green and gold, swirling like pollen caught in sunbeams. The voices of ancestors poured through Mira's scalp, through her chest, through her bones. Root knowledge, root memory, root song. Her hair lifted, every strand glowing. The first garden answered with a rumble that felt like a prayer. Above them, the ceiling cracked. Shouts echoed. Boots pounded. The fellowship was nearly through. The root mother's voice deepened. "If they touch me while I am awakening, they will claim what is not theirs, and you will be the key they break." "Then teach me," Mira said. Her voice shook. "Now." The root mother's form brightened, petals spreading wide behind her like an ancient halo. "Hold fast, daughter." Her voice wrapped around Mira like soil around a seed. "Root yourself. Grow wide. Grow deep." The first garden roared its approval, and the ritual began. Light spilled from the root mother in a slow, tidal bloom, gathering around Mira until she could no longer tell where her body ended and the garden began. Her veins pulsed with green fire. Her scalp tingled as every braid lifted on an unseen wind, and the soil beneath her feet hummed in syllables older than any spoken tongue. The trees bowed. The vines knelt. The roots rose like witnesses. Mira stood at the heart of it, breath tangled with ancestral voices, while the first garden awakened through her. Roots curled around her ankles, not restraining, but anchoring her. They threaded up her calves, warm as hands guiding her stance. Her hair lifted, each strand glowing as it unfurled its own stored memory sign. Bits of her grandmother's warnings, her mother's recipes, even Mira's own half-understood glyph sketches burst into light around her like fireflies. The root mother stepped back, towering and radiant, her body expanding into its true form. Bark plates unfolded along her chest, blooming outward. Branches thickened into antlered shapes. The petals of her crown ignited into full gold bloom, drenching the chamber with shimmering pollen. "Mira," she said, her voice trembling through the soil. "Root your fear. It will only feed them." Mira tried. She inhaled. The garden inhaled with her. Her breath reached deeper than her lungs, sliding into earth, rock, water, and the ancient bed of roots beneath everything. But above, far above, the fellowship broke through. A blast rang out, metal tearing like wounded bark. Roots recoiled in pain. Dust fell from the ceiling as cracks spidered across the chamber roof. Shouts filtered down. Flashlights flickered like cold stars. Metal boots stomped against living wood. The garden hissed. The root mother's expression darkened, grief mixing with fury. They come with iron in their hands, iron that remembers nothing. Mira's pulse spiked. "We have to hurry." "We will," the root mother said, "but a Bloomwright ritual is never rushed. The garden bends for no panic." Another crash overhead. A section of ceiling buckled inward, showering them with debris. A cluster of small roots shrieked as they were severed. Mira felt the pain ricochet through her like a spark hitting dry tinder. She gasped, "I can feel them hurting." "You feel much more than you once could," the root mother said, stepping forward. "Place your hands upon the soil." Mira knelt and pressed both palms into the earth. The ground inhaled. Her vision split open. She saw roots spiraling for miles into the deep, seeds glowing like sleeping suns, ancestral silhouettes moving through layers of memory soil, women with braided crowns weaving spells into seeds, hands weaving, unweaving, reweaving. A litany of faces she didn't know but somehow loved. This was the first garden's truth. Every ancestor was a root. Every root was a voice. Every voice was a path forward. The ember in Mira's chest flared, and the garden flared in return. The root mother lifted her arms. "Now, let us rise." Roots exploded upward, ripping through the floor above as though shredding parchment. Screams echoed overhead. The garden surged through corridors, swallowing walls, bursting open sealed doors. Plants erupted in fist-sized blooms, releasing spores that drifted like gold dust and extinguished weapons like candle flames. "Mira, steady yourself," the root mother warned. "Your thoughts shape the awakening." But Mira's thoughts were not steady. They were furious at the fellowship's lies, their surveillance, their hunger for ownership. Rage bloomed inside her, feeding the roots like a wildfire. The chamber trembled. A massive root burst from the wall behind her, spiraling toward the ceiling with enough force to shake the entire compound. The fellowship's shouts turned to panicked commands. "Control it, Mira," the root mother said sharply. "The garden cannot distinguish between your fear and your will. Guide it." Mira closed her eyes, inhaled, exhaled. She imagined calm. She imagined the garden growing deliberately, not blindly. She imagined protection, not destruction. The roots softened their ascent, splitting into curved, arching shapes rather than spears. The earth steadied beneath her. "Good," the root mother murmured. "You are learning to think as we once did. Thought as branch, emotion as leaf, intention as trunk." Mira opened her eyes. More fellowship soldiers dropped through the broken ceiling on cables, landing deep in the garden's heart. They raised weapons. The garden hissed. Flowers flared with defensive light. "Mira," one soldier yelled, disbelief cracking his voice. "Stand down. We can still contain this." Contain. The word snapped something in her. Mira rose slowly, roots peeling away from her legs like reverent serpents. "You can't contain what you never understood," she said. Her voice shook the leaves. One soldier fired. The root mother lifted her hand, and the bullet disintegrated into pollen before it reached Mira. "You fire iron at a garden?" the root mother thundered, her voice rattling every root. "And call yourselves stewards?" The soldiers reeled, shaken, but they pressed forward. "Mira," the root mother said gently, "their fear is their own. Yours is your inheritance. Choose how you bloom." Mira stepped forward, her braids lifted like living tendrils. The glyphs hidden along her scalp glowed. The ground beneath her feet pulsed, forming a spiral beneath her toes, like the opening of a colossal seed. Roots gathered behind her. Branches shaped themselves around her arms. Leaves settled across her shoulders like instinctive armor. She lifted her hands. A wave of green energy rippled outward. Not an attack, a command. The garden listened. Roots surged upward, not toward the soldiers, but around them, creating towers of woven bark that trapped them without crushing. Their weapons were wrenched from their hands and swallowed into the soil. The soldiers screamed, but Mira's ritual clocked power held steady. The chamber quieted. The root mother exhaled in relief. You chose mercy, daughter. That is the difference between us and them. Mira's heart pounded. I don't want to destroy anyone. You will not, but you will end them. Mira stiffened. End them? The fellowship, the root mother said gently. Not their lives, their reign. The chamber doors shattered inward. A final figure stormed into view. Dr. Selene, hair disheveled, coat torn, eyes glass bright, with a fury Mira had never seen. Mira, she screamed over the groaning roots. Stop this madness. You are condemning everything we built. What you built was a cage, Mira said quietly. Selene's jaw trembled. We raised you. We protected you. You studied me, Mira corrected, her voice now edged with root steel. Protected nothing but your own plans. Selene lifted a small device from her coat, a needle-like tool humming with cold blue light. Then I'll do what I must. The root mother tensed. Mira. But Mira was already moving. Roots shot forward, curling around the device and snapping it in half. Selene stumbled back, gasping. But roots didn't touch her skin. Mira strode closer. You taught me that every plant is a system, Mira said softly. Every system has a root, and every root can be cut or rerouted. Selene's gaze flicked to the root mother. She's controlling you. No, Mira said. She's reminding me who I am. The chamber shook again, but this time it wasn't the fellowship. It was the garden settling into full rebirth. Green light pooled under Mira's feet. The ritual was reaching its peak. The root mother's form expanded into luminous branches. Mira, she said, voice warm as soil after rain. Step into the heart. A circle of roots opened in the chamber floor, revealing a well of pure green luminescence. Mira stepped toward it. Selene reached for her, desperate. Mira, please don't do this. Once the garden rises, nothing human can hold it back again. Mira paused. Maybe it's time it doesn't have to. And she stepped into the well of light. The garden roared. The root mother dissolved into radiant vines, pouring herself into the ritual. Roots surged toward the surface, bursting through every floor of the compound, shattering walls, and turning sterile laboratories into wild groves. Above ground, trees rose where concrete once stood. Flowers unfurled across rooftops. The first garden climbed upward, reclaiming daylight. And in its luminous heart, Mira floated, bathed in the ancestral glow, her hair radiant, her braids alive, her body becoming the bridge between past and bloom. When the light finally dimmed, she stepped out of the circle, changed, rooted, awake. The first garden stood reborn, and Mira was its keeper. 17. The root mother's offer, chapter separator. The first garden held its breath when Mira entered, as if every petal and spine had been glued to silence by a trembling expectation. The root mother's form towered over the reborn grove, her silhouette drawn from bark older than clocks, her presence a storm wrapped in gentle moss. Mira felt her scalp prickle with the 1,000 ancestral voices weaving through her blood, restless as wind, trying to remember an old hymn. Child of the cut threads, the root mother murmured, her voice neither spoken nor heard. Your bloom has ripened. Her words slid through Mira's skin in tendrils of heat and memory. Mira stepped forward, hands open, fingers tingling with the full bright burn of Bloomwright mastery. It was a sensation like holding a seed that already contained its forest, humming with the promise of impossible futures. I'm ready, Mira said, though even she did not know what she meant by readiness against a being who could fold an entire world into a single root. The root mother leaned down, her face a lattice of vines, shifting through emotions older than language. You carry the last unbroken lineage. My return stirs hungry eyes. The fellowship's nets tighten. To protect what still lives, I must anchor myself to a vessel. The word vessel shook the air. The trembling leaves shivered their unease. A vessel, Mira repeated, voice thin. You mean me. You are the only one whose bloom remembers the original chord. With you, I survive. Through you, your people are shielded from the fellowship's grasp. The root mother's branches curled tenderly, almost apologetically, around Mira's shoulders. But yourself will dissolve. Your name will become a hollow stem. You will remain only as a memory inside me. Mira's breath caught, her throat constricted, as if the garden itself tightened around her. The air smelled suddenly of endings. And if I refuse? She asked, though the question was a wound before it left her lips. The root mother straightened, and the roots beneath Mira's feet groaned. Then I fall. Without a vessel, my form will collapse back into slumber. The fellowship will harvest what remains of me. With their hands on my power, they will unmake your world and prune its future into a single obedient branch. Mira's heart slammed against her ribs with frantic fists, the ancestors whispering inside her scalp, tangled into overlapping arguments. Some urged sacrifice. Some begged her to cling to herself, to remain the girl who once hid seeds in her pockets and whispered stories to the dirt. Others cried simply to survive. You're telling me that saving the world means losing myself? Mira whispered. No. Saving your world means becoming more than the self you cling to. The root mother's eyes glowed with patient sorrow. Every garden demands compost, even dreams. Mira pressed her hands to her chest, feeling the bloomwork pulsing below her skin. Her magic was no longer the hesitant flicker it had been months before. Now it flooded her, a river unearthed from its old cage of stone. Roots coiled inside her arms like living bracelets. Her scalp sang with threads of memory, her ancestral voices swelling in a chorus that was both battle cry and dirge. A tendril of light unfurled from the root mother's chest, curling toward Mira like a curious vine. If you accept me, we join as one. Your body becomes my body. Your voice becomes my echo. Your people survive. And I disappear? You change. Mira nearly laughed, but it cracked into something small. That's not comfort. The root mother's expression softened, leaves rustling with what might have been regret. Your fear is wise. Few are asked to surrender their entire self. Fewer still choose to. Mira staggered a step backward, breathing hard. The garden responded to her turmoil. Blossoms wilted, branches curled inward. Even the roots retreated, as if giving her space. Her mind flickered with images. The fellowship's cold laboratories, the children they had taken, the families cut apart by the hunger for controlled power. She saw the spires rising over the fellowship's compound, hungry as metallic thorns. She saw her people, fractured and fleeing, splintered across the continent like scattered petals. If the fellowship captured the root mother, everything would end, not with fire, but with erasure, a pruning so clean that even history would not remember the burn. But to stop that, Mira would have to vanish inside a new god. Her stomach twisted. I don't want to die, she whispered. You won't. The root mother stepped closer, vines brushing her cheeks. But the life you know will molt. Your name will drift into the soil. A new thing will rise, Mira swallowed, trembling. A deity wearing my bones. A guardian wearing your bloom. The difference felt like a hair's width, but the root mother made it sound like a continent. The ancestors roared through her scalp now, a thunderhead of voices, some weeping, some begging, some brimming with pride. Their energy surged into her hands, warm and bright, lifting small motes of pollen around her like drifting stars. Mira felt the full force of her magic swell into its final shape. Her Bloomwright mastery unfurled like a flower splitting stone. She could feel the world's pulse beneath her feet. She felt the garden breathe through her. She felt the root mother's power, brushing her nerves with liquid fire. And somewhere beneath all of it, her small human fear curled like a seed refusing to sprout. Mira, the root mother said gently, the choice is yours, not destiny's, not the ancestors', yours. The garden shimmered with impossible quiet. Even the air seemed to turn its head toward her. Mira closed her eyes, letting her magic gather inside her palms. It throbbed with life, memory, and unbearable promise. She saw her mother's face. She saw her younger self running through cracked concrete fields. She saw the fellowship's boots trampling through the remnants of her childhood. She saw the broken children she had sworn to protect. Her breath trembled. She opened her eyes. I choose. The garden held its breath, bowed toward her like a congregation awaiting revelation. And Mira spoke the words that would either save the world or doom it. I choose to. The air thickened. The roots beneath her curled upward, tense as held breath. Even the glowing leaves overhead froze mid-flicker, as though the entire first garden leaned closer, desperate to hear what she would become. The root mother's vast silhouette hovered behind the light, her form a tapestry of branching veins and shimmering pulse lines, ancient and weary and terribly intent. Mira's chest heaved. The choice clawed at her from both sides. To surrender herself meant dissolving into the root mother's purpose, becoming a lineage without a face. To refuse meant the fellowship would eventually find a way to harness the first garden, weaponize it, distill her ancestors into something tame and hollow. Her braids, still rebraiding themselves from her last act of power, tightened along her spine, as if urging caution. But the unbraided sections hummed with ancestral courage, each loose strand a memory daring her not to shrink. I choose to remain Mira, she whispered. The first garden shuddered. The root mother's light dimmed, then flared so violently Mira flinched back. Child of my making, the entity murmured, voice like sap hardening in the cold. You refuse unity. You refuse transcendence. I refuse to disappear. A low resonance trembled through the chamber of roots, uncoiling like a warning. The vines around her trembled between devotion and revolt. Petals folded inward, then bristled outward in defensive bloom. The garden did not know what to do with a Bloomwright who said no. Root mother drifted closer. You would let the fellowship devour this place instead? No, Mira said, louder. But I won't let you devour me either. Something cracked overhead. A fissure of light split the air, thin as a hair, bright as a sun thread. The root mother recoiled, as if struck. You do not understand the price of your refusal. I understand enough. My memories are already peeling away. My mind is already stitched with things that aren't mine. If I give you the rest, nothing of me survives, not even the pieces I'm fighting to protect. Root mother examined her in silence. Plants around them bent toward Mira instead of the spirit, an omen the ancestors had chosen. You seek an impossible middle path, Root mother said softly, to keep yourself and still save the many. It's the only path that honors both. The fissure above widened, casting a strange dawn across the garden. Roots twisted in caution, leaves hissed. Mira didn't know what she had summoned, only that her refusal had cracked something fundamental in the contract between Bloomwright and Origin Spirit. Root mother's face flickered between 100 women. Mira's mother, her grandmother, unknown ancestors whose eyes burned like green suns. Then choose your consequence, the root mother said. If you reject me, you must stand against me, and you have not yet seen what I am when denied. A surge of wind spiraled downward, scattering glowing pollen until it burned like embers in Mira's hair. Her braids reacted violently, coiling around her shoulders, tightening like living wards. I'll stand against whatever tries to erase me, Mira said, and the courage surprised even her. Root Mother's luminous form trembled. A sound rose from her. Neither grief nor rage, but something deeper, older. Sorrow carved into the texture of power. Then you become my adversary, she whispered. The ground shook. Roots the size of towers began withdrawing from the walls, curling backward as though preparing to strike or retreat. The petals overhead snapped shut. The air buzzed with dormant fury waking at last. Mira steadied herself. I don't want to fight you. But you will, the root mother said, because you have made yourself the last wall between me and resurrection. The fissure overhead split fully open. Light poured through, not golden, but green-white, the color of sap boiling. It hit the root mother like a thrown spear, her vast form distorting into violent arcs of light. She screeched, a sound that splintered the leaves around her, and vines whipped around her, binding, grounding, containing. The garden was punishing her refusal. No, testing it. Root mother writhed. Mira, Bloomwright, if you walk this path, creation will follow your fear, not your will. Choose again. But Mira felt something shift inside herself. A braid unwinding, not in destruction, but revelation. Her ancestors no longer whispered. They waited. They trusted her choice. For the first time, Mira said, voice steady, I'm choosing for me. The fissure closed. The vines released their grip. Root Mother's form collapsed into a dim silhouette, panting with the effort of holding herself together. Then the next chapter begins in conflict, she rasped. Mira swallowed hard. So be it. The first garden rippled like a beast waking under stone, and Mira stood alone in its echoing heart, having refused the oldest power she'd ever known. Knowing the fellowship would feel this shift, this rebellion, this fracture in the garden's lineage. Knowing everyone was coming, and she would face them, not as a vessel, not as an echo, not as a borrowed throat, but as Mira, Bloomwright, self-forged, and finally free to decide what her power would mean. The freedom did not feel like triumph. It felt like a precipice. Mira stood in the hollow of the first garden as its breathing deepened, its roots retracting into the earth with a sound like bones settling. The glow across the moss dimmed, then pulsed again, steady but wary, as though the entire biome reassessed her in the wake of her refusal. She felt it in her teeth, a trembling awareness. She had not just denied the root mother, she had split something sacred. The air tasted of sap and judgment. Her braids tightened, half shield, half warning. Their weight had changed. They felt heavier now, filled with new memory threads that had slipped into them the moment she declared her own sovereignty. The ancestors had gifted her something in secret. Or maybe they had simply acknowledged her, not as vessel, but heir. Your path is chosen, a faint voice whispered across the leaves. Not root mother, one of the lesser spirits, an echo shaped by old petals and older grief. And choice is the most dangerous seed. Mira exhaled shakily. I know. The voice faded, the leaves stilled. The garden withdrew into silence, its attention pulling away from her like a great shadow turning elsewhere. She understood. She was no longer being held, no longer being guided. The garden had stepped back, leaving her to walk with the full weight of what she had done. A faint tremor rippled beneath her foot. Her heart seized. The fellowship. They had felt the shift, the refusal, the severing. The institute above was woven into the garden's root veins. Any disturbance echoed up its lungs of glass and steel. They would know something had gone wrong. They would sense a break in the pact they believed they controlled. Her autonomy had lit a beacon. Mira lifted her chin, feeling her pulse settle into a slow, anchored rhythm. The garden's glow clung to her skin, painting her in soft green halos. She no longer felt small when she stood in this place. She felt claimed, but on her own terms. What now? She whispered into the earth. The answer wasn't words. It was direction. A thin root unfurled from the ground and curled itself around her ankle, not binding, not leading, simply pointing toward the upper tunnels, toward the world above, where the fellowship moved like white-coated blades, where they would soon arrive with their scanners, their hypotheses, their hunger. Mira squared her shoulders. "No," she murmured. "They won't take this from me." Her magic rose like heat, subtle at first, then coiling up through her spine, down her arms, through the spaces between her fingers. It was not the root mother's influence. She could feel the difference now. This was her inheritance, raw, unsupervised, unfiltered through ancient will. She pressed her palms to the soil. Warmth pulsed outward. The garden did not tremble this time. It answered. A faint glow spread through its root system, tracing veins of light through the earth like an inverted constellation. Mira closed her eyes as the voices of her ancestors pulsed through her fingertips in muffled waves. Not instructions, not orders, permission. She realized then that autonomy was not the opposite of belonging. She could stand apart without severing the line entirely. Her lineage did not vanish because she refused submission. If anything, it rose around her now as a unified hum, proud in a quiet, resolute way. The ground trembled again, sharper this time. The fellowship was coming. She felt the vibrations of their machinery through the root current, scanners warming, boots marching, containment protocols humming to life. They would breach the lowest sublevels within minutes. Mira stood slowly. Her braids rustled in anticipation. Her ribs ached with the aftermath of everything she'd lost. Her mother's face, childhood fragments, pieces of memory, eaten by the bloom cost. But she felt something else filling the gaps. Not replacement, but purpose. She stepped forward. The garden shifted with her, its roots peeling away from her path without hesitation. It understood her intention. It recognized her claim. She reached the stone arch that led back to the Institute's underbelly. The passage still glowed faintly from her earlier awakening, vines spiraling along the walls in luminous threads. Her fingers brushed them as she passed. "I'm coming back," she said softly to the garden, but not as prey. The vines curled in a gesture like a nod. When she emerged into the corridor beyond, the air snapped colder, sterile and metallic, stripped of the garden's breath. Alarm lights pulsed faintly overhead. Somewhere above her, an elevator was descending. Her shadow stretched before her like a herald. Mira inhaled and let the last remnants of fear drain from her spine. She had denied a goddess. She had held her ground in origin soil. Whatever the fellowship thought they were about to capture, they were wrong. She lifted her chin. Let them come. Her braids hummed with ancestral fire. Her hands glowed with root light. And Mira walked toward the oncoming threat, not as a vessel, not as an experiment, not as a broken heir of a stolen legacy, but as a Bloomwright who had chosen herself and would defend that choice with every fragment of magic she had left. The moment she took her second step, the elevator doors above began to open. Mira is standing between two worlds. no longer claimed, no longer beholden, prepared to reshape the next battle in her own image. 18. The Third Price, Chapter Separator. The corridor shuddered around her as the elevator descended, its groaning cables echoing through the steel spine of the Institute. Mira stood in its path like a fixed star, her breath steady, her magic rising in quiet spirals through her chest. Her braids warmed, heavy with old warnings, old promises, old debts. A pulse of green light rippled beneath the floor. The garden wasn't done with her. Mira closed her eyes. The roots beneath the concrete stirred, coiling upward as if listening at a door. She felt their breath, their expectation, their sorrow. A single tendril brushed the sole of her boot. An invitation, a price. "No," she whispered, "not another one. I've given enough." But the roots didn't retreat. They trembled, offering her something vast, a key she recognized by instinct alone. Root command. The ancestral authority her line had carried in fragments, lost across generations, watered with grief and hidden under fear. The power to command every leaf, every vein of chlorophyll, every tendril in the garden and beyond. The ability to turn plants into shield or weapon with a single breath. It was everything the fellowship wanted, everything the root mother once wielded, everything Mira had never asked to inherit. The roots stroked the floor again. "Choose." Mira's pulse thinned. She forced her voice steady. "What will it take from me?" This time, the answer was not symbolic. It hit her with a certainty so sharp it stole her breath. Her mother. Every memory of her. The laughter, the hands that braided her hair, the scent of rosemary on her fingers, the sound of her voice singing before dawn, the warnings whispered in half-light, the warmth that shaped the first years of her life. Gone, not dead. What is dead can be mourned. Erased. What is erased cannot even be missed, except by the body that once held it. Mira's knees weakened. The elevator clanged somewhere far above. Metal against metal. Approach. Threat. Reality. She pressed her palm to the floor, as if she could steady the world by touch alone. "You can't ask that of me." But the power pulsed again. Not cruel, not demanding, offering. Her mother had carried it. Her grandmother. Her great-grandmother. All of them paying pieces of themselves to keep the bloodline alive. To guard the garden from conquest. To keep the root mother from falling into the wrong hands. This was the last fragment, the burden they could not pass down intact. Mira's throat tightened, thick with refusal that tasted like grief. "I can fight without it. I can." The roots did not argue. They merely trembled with the quiet knowledge that she couldn't. Not against the fellowship's containment units. Not against their extraction rigs. Not against their desire to pry every secret from her marrow. "I can't lose her," Mira whispered. A shiver of heat ran through her braids, her mother's braiding, her mother's oils, her mother's warnings tucked into every careful twist. The garden answered with one final truth. Memories are seeds. They must be planted somewhere. Tears slipped from her jaw to the floor. The elevator was halfway down. Boots echoed through upper halls. Time frayed. Mira bowed her head, her voice breaking open. "If this is the only way, then take it gently." The floor split. Roots surged upward like warm hands, wrapping her wrists, her rib cage, her scalp. They did not choke. They held, soft as lullabies. A hum rose, low and mournful, an ancient song for sacrifices that no one else would ever know. Her vision blurred. Her mother's face flickered, her mother in morning light, gone. Her mother's voice telling her how to mix oils, gone. Her mother laughing as they watered seedlings, gone. Her mother tucking a warning into her braid, gone. Her mother dying, gone. Her mother living, gone. Her mother, her. The memory shattered soundlessly. A cold emptiness bloomed behind her eyes. The roots released her. Mira inhaled sharply, stumbling as though a rope had just been cut inside her chest. Something was missing, an entire shape in her mind. Something she had carried so long she never questioned its weight. She reached for it instinctively, found nothing. Not absence, silence. Her braids fell around her shoulders. They felt heavier, without a presence she could no longer name. "Stand, daughter seed," the garden murmured. "You carry the command." She rose slowly, and the world answered. Every vine in the garden stirred. Every root flexed. Every leaf shivered. Every dormant seed awakened with soft, crackling breath. Mira exhaled. The elevator slammed into its stop above. The doors hissed open. Fellowship boots flooded the hall. Mira turned toward them. She did not remember her mother's face, that she knew somewhere deep in marrow beyond memory that her mother had not raised her to kneel. Her palms glowed with raw green power. Roots gathered behind her like an army, waking for dawn. Her heart ached with a loss she could no longer name, but her magic stood at full strength. And Mira stepped forward, ready to face them with the last gift of her bloodline blazing in her bones. She whispered to the roots, the vines, the seeds, "Follow." And they did. They surged with a unity she had never felt before. The roots crawled up the hall like waking serpents, breaking through the ceramic tiles, cracking the grout, splitting metal grates. Vines burst from the vents in writhing coils, their tendrils tasting the air for threat. Leaves unfurled mid-stride, sharp as blades and trembling with anticipation. Mira walked forward, and the plants moved as her shadow. The fellowship troop at the far end froze. She recognized their armor: reinforced chest plating, vine-resistant mesh, nerve-suppressant injectors clipped to their belts, designed for containment, designed for her. One man stepped forward with a stabilizer wand raised. "Mira, stop. You don't know what you're..." The roots seized the wand before he finished the sentence. They snapped it in half like a twig and flung the pieces against the wall with a crack that echoed the length of the hall. The man stumbled back, terror blanching his face. Mira didn't raise her hand. She didn't speak. Her will pulsed outward like a heartbeat, and every plant obeyed. "Stand aside," she said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of earth itself. Two obeyed immediately, stepping back from pure instinct, their spines bowing without conscious thought. But others hesitated. Some reached for their weaponized gloves. One touched the emergency suppressant switch on his wrist. Mira inhaled. The vines lashed upward, coiling around the switch before it could be pressed. The man yelped as the vines tightened around his elbow, holding, not hurting, merely forcing compliance. "You don't need to fight me," Mira said. "You only need to move." A whisper threaded through her braids, ancestral voices rising, falling, 1,000 generations braided into a single rhythm. She didn't know their names, but she felt their certainty, guiding her hands, her breath, her power. The fellowship had never understood the bloodline. They studied the branches, but never the roots. A soldier mustered his courage and braced his feet. "We can't let you pass." "You were never meant to," Mira replied. The seeds at her feet trembled. She felt them listening, waiting, wanting. She reached down, brushing her fingertips across the cracked tiles where the roots gathered in a tangle of expectation. "Grow," she commanded. They obeyed in a rush of sound so loud it felt like thunder rolling inside bone. Green erupted through the hall, unfurling upward like a tidal wave. The soldiers shouted, raising their arms to shield their faces. Vines shot across the walls, weaving into a living barricade. Leaves unfurled as broad as shields, layering themselves between Mira and the fellowship until she could no longer see their shapes through the dense mass of green. The barrier sealed with a shudder. Silence followed, tense and pulsing with energy. Her breath shook. The roots beneath her steadied her ankles, sensing the tremor, lending her balance. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt emptied, hollowed, carved by sacrifice. But the power held, and the price had been paid. She stepped forward, touching the barrier lightly. It parted for her like curtains drawn by gentle hands. The scent of earth rose in the gap, rich, loamy, alive. She entered the space beyond. This corridor was older, less polished, less touched by the fellowship's careful hands. The walls carried faint stains of soil and moss, remnants of experiments shelved or abandoned. Pipes overhead hissed with humidity, dripping beads of warm water that pattered like rain across her shoulders. Her chest tightened. She didn't know why. Something about the humidity, something about the warmth. But the reason slid from her like water through open fingers. "No," she whispered, pressing a palm to her sternum. The ache there sharpened, then faded, again, swallowed into the blank quiet of her stolen memories. The roots responded with a gentle tremor, as if trying to comfort a loss she could no longer name. "Keep going," she told them softly. The vines guided her deeper. They parted around corners, lit her path with faint bioluminescent flickers, and shivered when danger approached. A hum pulsed from the floor. Something massive was stirring far below. The seed chamber was awakening again. Mira's pulse synced to the rhythm, each beat drawing strength from the roots that wrapped her wrists. She no longer fought the sensation, no longer feared being overwhelmed. Her mind held the parallel thought streams easily now, one channel filled with her own focus, the other flooded with roots and leaves, and ancestral echoes. Mastery was not a moment. It was surrender layered with strength. She had reached it. She stepped into the descending stairwell. As she moved, the leaves whispered warnings. The pipes overhead rattled. The temperature dipped. The fellowship was regrouping. She would face them again. She would face the root mother's shadow. She would face the world reshaping itself beneath her. But something in her had settled, hardened, blossomed. She had paid the third price, and the garden had answered. Mira touched her braid, fingers brushing the place where something used to live. She didn't know what memory she sought. She only knew it was gone. And still, she walked. "Guide me," she whispered. The roots surged ahead, pulling her toward the chamber where history waited to be rewritten. The girl she had been was gone. What rose to take her place was something the fellowship had feared since the first Bloomwright ever touched Earth. A root command bearer. A living garden, a force crowned in green. Mira followed the path the plants carved for her, her footsteps ringing through the subterranean dark. She did not look back. The garden didn't need her to remember what she had lost. It only needed her to grow. And she did, in a way no human body was meant to. The clearing widened around her, air thinning as if even breath hesitated to trespass into what she was becoming. Power braided itself through her bones, gentle and merciless, a flowering crown spinning open within her ribs. Root command surged outward in a pulse that rattled every branch in earshot. The fellowship forces staggered, armor chiming like struck bells. The ground beneath her softened, warmed, then hummed, recognition, welcome, awe. Mira, Bray whispered, half in warning, half in worship. Rear steadied himself, lifting his staff. Hold your line. Her power is stolen, not earned. But Mira heard the lie hanging off his words like mold. The grove answered only to truth, and the truth was that her power did not belong to her at all. It belonged to the countless generations who had bled in silence, the mothers who had sung over empty cradles, the daughters who had carried seeds no one believed in, the ancestors who had left their prayers in tree hollows because no temple would hold them. Her mother, no. She touched the hollow where that memory should have been, and felt a tremor move through her, sharp as the first cut of winter. She had traded the dearest root inside her for this, and she could not fail. Stand down, Mira said, her voice carrying through the clearing like a shifting tide, or be unmade. The word in her tone wasn't magic. It was an inevitability. Rare struck first. A lance of condensed spell-light lashed toward her, bright as a forged noon. Before it could reach her chest, a wall of bark burst upward in a sweeping arc, intercepting the blast with a resounding crack. The force splintered the bark, but the pieces lifted again instantly, re-knitting as easily as breath finding lungs. Root command was not a weapon. It was a language, and she was speaking fluently. Mira raised her hand. A ring of roots erupted around the Fellowship's vanguard, weaving into a spiraled barricade. It did not crush them. It did not maim. It only held them, gentle as a giant's cupped hands, denying them another step. Still, some fought on. Bolts of red witchfire hissed across the clearing. Mira inhaled, and the trees behind her bent, sweeping their branches forward in wide, whirling arcs that swallowed the projectiles. Leaves caught fire, then folded inward, smothering the flames with calm precision. Rare shouted something incoherent. Rage or disbelief, it hardly mattered. He charged, but a determined one. Mira closed her eyes. Every root in the clearing responded instantly, as if listening for her heart's next beat. They rose beneath Rare's boots, tangling, lifting him inches off the ground. His staff fell from his grasp, clattering once before a slender vine curled around it and snapped it clean in two. Why resist? She asked him softly. You were meant to serve, Rare spat, still suspended. Not ascend. Mira opened her eyes, and the pity in them was sharper than any blade. I was meant to grow. The roots lowered him gently to his knees, disarmed, unharmed, irrelevant. All at once, the clearing fell still. No clash of spells, no shouted orders, only the trembling hush of hundreds realizing the battle had ended before it began. Bray stepped forward. Mira, you did it. She nodded, though triumph felt faint and distant, like an echo heard from underwater. Her power thrummed through the whole grove, a chorus waiting for its conductor. Yet in the center of her chest, that hollow ached with a terrible brightness. My people are safe, she said. The words steadied her, anchored her. The Fellowship cannot claim the Root Mother now. Soliane exhaled shakily, relief buckling her shoulders. Then it's over? No, Mira murmured. The trees whispered agreement. The wind stirred with a strange expectancy. Far beneath the soil, something old adjusted its weight, listening. Not over, Mira said. Just begun. She turned toward the pathway, leading deeper into the grove's heart, where the next trial waited, and the next reckoning. Her friends followed without question. Their silhouettes trailed behind her like loyal shadows, but she alone carried the silence, where her mother's memory had once lived. A silence she would never fill. A silence that would shape every choice she made from this day forward. Mira lifted her chin. The grove bowed to her. Come, she said. There's more to face. They walked with her, step by step, toward the future she had paid for with the first root of her heart. 19. The Fall of Meridian, chapter separator. Meridian smelled of copper storms and frightened metal as Mira approached its threshold, the city humming with a wounded pulse. It had once been the Fellowship's crown jewel, a fortress of research towers and ritual domes braided together by walkways of glass and iron. Now its walls trembled, listening to the rhythm of someone they had never been built to contain. Mira crossed into the streets, and every flower bed, gutter moss, and rooftop vine stirred toward her with electric hunger. The city guards saw her first. They raised alarms that rang like cracked bells, their voices folding into panic as route command rolled outward from her in a low, steady wave. Cracks threaded across the pavement where she walked. Dust lifted, swirling in little vortices shaped by the pulse of her thoughts. "Stand aside," she said. Not loudly, but the command sank into the earth and climbed straight into their bones. Some obeyed. Some ran. Some raised weapons they barely believed in. None mattered. Bloomwright ascension meant she did not need fury to fight. Her mere presence had become a spell. The first roots broke through Meridian's eastern street like flung spears, rising in a spiral before slamming down across a convoy of armored carts. Metal shrieked. Wheels snapped. The machinery folded inward, as if embarrassed by its own fragility. Guards stumbled away, shielding their faces as vines webbed across the ground and swallowed the wreckage whole. Mira didn't slow. Her braids, heavy with power, lifted in a wind that wasn't wind at all. Each strand alive with ancestral memory. The voices of the mothers who remembered older worlds murmured through her scalp. She felt them as warmth against the skin behind her ears, urging her onward. The Fellowship had dug its laboratories deep beneath Meridian, filling them with forbidden engines and memory seeds harvested from stolen groves. Mira could feel those seeds now, hundreds of them, thrumming in the dark like caged hearts. She descended the main staircase, leading toward the central plaza. That was when the first memory seed detonated. A psychic shockwave tore through the square, rattling windows until they burst outward in cascading crystal dust. Mira staggered as visions lashed across her mind in chaotic bursts. Someone else's childhood, a deathbed prayer, a mother's last lullaby, a hand clutching broken bark. Too many lifetimes funneling through a single breath. She pressed her palm to the ground. Quiet. The command rippled outward. The shockwave drained into her, swallowed whole. The memories settled at her feet like exhausted birds. She rose, breath steadying. 5 Fellowship tacticians emerged from the plaza's upper levels, their armor flickering with runes meant to neutralize nature magic. They were confident, smirking even, until the trees lining the plaza bowed toward Mira like summoned guardians. Bloomwright, one spat, brandishing a staff that glimmered with stolen wood. "You cannot contain all the seeds. They will break you." "No," Mira answered, her voice touched with all the calm of a rising tide. "They will remember who they belong to." She lifted her hand toward the western towers. The memory seeds stored inside them pulsed as one, like a chorus taking its first breath. Cracks spidered along the tower walls. Dust fell. The seeds burst from their containment chambers and floated upward in shimmering swarms, their glow reflecting in Mira's eyes. She exhaled, long and deliberate. The swarm answered her exhale. It expanded, then condensed, then shot downward in a rain of psychic light. The tacticians barely raised their shields before the shock tore through them. sending them screaming into visions of their own buried regrets. They crumpled, clutching their helmets. Mira advanced toward the central lift that sank into Meridian's deepest vaults. Roots tore through the machinery before she even reached it. Cobblestone heaved upward, spilling dirt onto polished metal walkways. Thick cords of wood and vine wrapped the lift's structure and ripped it open like a husk. Her heart hammered, but not from strain. From the weight of an entire lineage waking through her blood. The deeper she went, the more the city resisted. Runes crackled along the walls of the descent shaft. The Fellowship had installed anti-nature wards in layer after layer, feeding them with siphoned Bloomwright essence. She could feel echoes of harvested souls pressed into the walls, like trapped whispers. Mira placed both hands against the stone. The wards lit, flaring bright, ready to repel her. She opened herself. Bloomwright mastery was not a spell, but a surrender. She loosened every barrier inside her mind and let the ancestral tide rush forward. A cold pressure slid up her spine, then bloomed outward between her shoulder blades. Her fingertips glowed with chlorophyll fire. The wards dimmed, flickered, died. Meridian's foundations groaned like an animal unclenching. The vault doors below split open in a jagged, glowing fracture. Air rushed out of the depths, carrying the sting of engineered rot. Mira stepped through as roots cascaded down the shaft behind her, weaving themselves into walkways and railings for her companions, if they still dared to follow. The grand repository unfolded before her. Rows of containment spires stretched into the shadows. Roots and vines had been severed from living mothers and forced to feed machines that pulsed with counterfeit life. Thousands of memory seeds floated in locked stasis fields, glowing faintly like captured fireflies. Mira's jaw tightened. "This ends now," she whispered. Her braids lifted. Her eyes brightened to a verdant blaze. The entire repository reacted, straining against its metal constraints. Roots erupted from the ceiling, walls and floor at once, ripping through machinery with eager violence. Sparks flew like startled minnows. Pipes burst. Liquid enchantments spilled in streaming arcs. Metal screamed in protest as it was pried apart, piece by trembling piece. Memory seeds broke free of their prisons, swirling upward in a widening vortex. Mira stood at the center of the storm. She raised both arms. "Return!" The vortex collapsed inward in a spiraling rain of light. Each memory seed dissolved into fine pollen, drifting softly toward the earth. The floor drank the rain, trembling with gratitude, and the ancestral chorus roared through the vault, a sound so vast the metal itself shivered. Somewhere above, Meridian's towers began to fall. Stone rumbled, lights flickered. Alarm sirens cut short mid-wail. Mira heard screams, distant but human, and lifted her gaze to the ceiling. Root command tightened around her spine. She brought her palms together. Every vine, every tendril, every root erupted upward, racing through the entire city in a storm of green. They caught falling debris, cupped collapsing towers, diverted rubble away from the living. Not even the Fellowship soldiers, those who had tried to kill her, were crushed. Power did not need cruelty to be absolute. By the time the last tower settled into its new, humbled position, Meridian was no longer a city of human supremacy. It was a reclaimed sanctuary, wild and breathing, grown into a cradle of tangled roots. Mira stood amid it all, chest rising and falling, with slow, deliberate breaths. She had destroyed Meridian. She had spared Meridian. She had rewritten Meridian. And she stood alone between human corruption and the vast ancestral force that stirred beneath her feet, awakening fully for the first time in centuries. The world, it seemed, was ready to rise with her. The ground answered first. A tremor rippled through the plaza, not violent, but expectant, as if Meridian's foundations held their breath. Cracks spidered through polished stone, soil pushed upward, hungry to reclaim what had been stolen. The air changed too, thickening with the metallic scent of sap and the warm breath of photosynthesis. Every leaf Mira had awakened quivered in unison, awaiting her command. A chorus of alarmed shouts rose from the fellowship barricade across the plaza. White coats flashed between overturned tables and shattered equipment. They scrambled to recalibrate machines that no longer obeyed them. Screens flickered with green static. Monitors displayed nothing but vines. Dr. Vanar's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and cracking at the edges. Contain her. Do not let her reach the central tower. Mira could feel the tower, even without seeing it. A beacon of metal, choking the roots beneath it. A wound in the soil. Something deep within her snarled at the thought of its continued existence. The plants around her echoed the feeling, leaves rustling in a low, restless churn. She stepped forward. The roots followed. A wave of green unfurled behind her, curling across the floor like living tidewater. Each step she took pressed new patterns of power into the ground. She didn't need to think about commanding them anymore. The plants moved as she moved, breathed as she breathed, sharpened as she sharpened. The third price had broken something open inside her, or burned something away. She no longer remembered her mother's face, but she remembered her purpose. A barricade of armed guards rushed toward her. Not scientists, this time. Security in reinforced shields and shock weapons. The closest one braced his stance and raised a pulse rifle. "Stand down," he shouted. "Do not take another step." Mira didn't. The roots did. They erupted between the guards' boots, splitting the floor cleanly. Vines snapped upward, twisting around rifles and wrenching them from their hands. Shields cracked like eggshells against thickening bark. Shock batons sparked and sputtered, useless against living fiber that rerouted the current harmlessly into the soil. The guards fell back, not injured, just disarmed and unwilling to test her power again. "Mira!" Someone screamed from the far end of the plaza. Not a guard, not a scientist, a voice shaken thin by fear. "Please stop. You'll collapse the entire city." She looked toward the speaker, a woman in a lab uniform, Archivist Kellen, trembling behind a storage crate. Mira remembered her, the one who hesitated, the one who opened the door too slowly during the experiments, the one who refused to meet Mira's eyes afterward. Kellen's voice cracked. "If you destroy Meridian, you destroy everyone, even the people who had nothing to do with this." The plants quieted, for a moment. Then the chorus rose again, soft and ancient and impossible to ignore. Roots do not distinguish guilt. Soil remembers all wounds. Mira lifted a hand, and the earth responded with the slow coil of roots circling her ankles. "I'm not here for Meridian," she said, voice steady. "I'm here for the fellowship." Kellen's face crumpled. "They're everywhere, Mira. Hidden, protected. This won't kill the fellowship. It will only kill the people they use." Mira swallowed, hard. The roots beneath her shivered. She felt their question humming up her bones. Destroy? Reclaim? Spare? Grow? Choices pressed in all around her like enclosing vines. But the anger within her was not blind. It was precise, focused. She didn't have to uproot the city. She only had to target its rot. Mira turned away from Kellen and looked toward the central tower, the Fellowship's heart, the place where they stored their research, their experiments, their stolen seeds, their future plans for her bloodline. The tower loomed like a spear of metal, stabbing into the sky. Mira exhaled. The plants inhaled, and the assault began. Roots surged toward the tower foundations, thickening into pillars as they went. Bark armor fused over them until each root was the width of a tree trunk. They slammed into the base of the tower, cracking metal like thin glass. Alarms screamed. Windows shattered. A shockwave rattled the plaza. Inside the tower, lights flickered and died. The Fellowship scrambled to evacuate. "Mira!" Vanner's voice thundered from above, echoing through a failing intercom. "You don't understand what you're doing. The Root Mother will consume you. She always consumes her vessels." Mira raised her hand, and vines climbed her arm like a living gauntlet. "I'm not her vessel," she called back. "I'm her heir." The ground split wider, swallowing the tower's lower supports. A deep groan rolled through the plaza. The tower leaned, its shadow stretched across the ground like the arm of something dying. Vanner's voice broke into static. Selene appeared at a high window, her face pale, her hair wild, her expression a mask of disbelief and fury. "But you're a child, playing with ancestors who do not care if you survive their rebirth." Mira's braids tightened, humming in a rising chord of agreement and defiance. "They don't have to care," Mira said quietly. "I care." With her next breath, the plant surged, not to destroy the tower fully, but to crack open its side like a seed husk splitting under rain. Metal peeled away. Glass sprayed outward. Inside the central elevator shaft lay exposed, a glowing spine of machinery. Roots plunged into it, shorting out its circuitry in a cascade of sparks. The tower's upper levels began to collapse. Mira stepped back, letting the destruction complete itself. She didn't need to guide it anymore. Nature had taken the wound personally. The tower buckled, groaned. A scream of shattering steel tore across Meridian as the structure crashed into the plaza. Dust exploded outward. Vines followed the fall, cushioning the impact, redirecting debris, ensuring civilians in nearby wings weren't crushed. The Fellowship's stronghold was gone. Silence filled the plaza. The plants settled. Earth exhaled. Mira did not. Because through the settling dust, a figure staggered into view, leaning heavily against the ruins. Blood trickled down his temple. His lab coat was torn to ribbons. Dr. Vanner, still staring at her, with a fanatic light burning in his ruined eyes. "You've destroyed nothing," he rasped. Ensuring civilians in nearby wings weren't crushed into the plot. "You've only begun the war." Mira stepped toward him, and every root in Meridian followed. Like a living tide, a wall of bark and sap. Dr. Vanner's breath hitched. He wasn't a man anymore so much as a figure carved out of fear and obsession. Dust coated his face, streaking around the blood trickling down his cheek. Yet his eyes, burning with that same manic faith, never wavered from Mira. "You think you've won," he rasped, lacking even the strength to lift his voice. "But you've only awakened what will devour you." Meridian was built atop the first garden for a reason. We knew what lay beneath. We knew the price. Mira continued walking toward him, slow and steady. The plants parted for her, forming an open path. Vanar trembled as she approached, but the terror in him only sharpened into a twisted certainty. "She will hollow you out," he hissed. "The root mother does not share power. She takes, and once she takes you, your body will move in her shape. Your voice will echo hers. Your choices will cease to matter." Mira stopped an arm's length away. The air between them vibrated with the buzzing chorus of awakened leaves. "If that were true," Mira said, "I wouldn't still be standing here as myself." Vanar's laugh cracked, splitting at the edges. "You think losing your memory was the end of the prices. You haven't even begun to understand what your bloodline is paying." The roots behind her flinched, as if absorbing those words into their bark. A faint ache stirred in Mira's chest, like a phantom absence, but she refused to let him see the flicker of pain. He saw it anyway. His expression twisted into something triumphant. "Yes, you feel it. The hollowing has already started. Your mother's face is gone. What do you think goes next? Her voice, her lullabies, the way she held you? Piece by piece, she'll carve you into a perfect vessel." Mira moved. Not violently, not even fast. Just close. She crouched in front of him so they were eye level. Her braids glowed faintly, pulsing with the green fire of the third price. Vanar tried to pull back, but roots rose behind him, holding him in place, not constricting, only preventing escape. A prison made of gentleness. Mira spoke quietly. "I'm not her vessel. I'm her heir." Vanar's breath shivered. "You can't separate the two." "I already have." She touched her palm to the ground. The response was immediate. The entire plaza hummed with her heartbeat. Roots twisted into spirals beneath the cracked stone. Memory seeds buried deep within the soil lit like embers, rising through layers of earth in soft, floating globes. Mira rose to her feet. The light intensified. The seeds blossomed around her in a halo, each orb filled with the ancestral green of the first garden. They vibrated with past voices, past knowledge, past grief, all awaiting her command. Mira lifted her chin. "This is Bloomwright mastery," she said. "Not possession, not sacrifice. Choice." Vanar stared at the seeds, his horror turning to awe. You shouldn't be able to command them." "But I can." She extended her hand. The memory seeds drifted toward her, circling her like fireflies caught in the slow spin of the moon. They pulsed brighter with every breath she took, and then they sank into her. Not violently, not consuming. A soft merging, soil meeting soil. A rush of ancient voices whispered through her, brushing her thoughts like fingertips through braids. Names of her foremothers, stories of the first garden, warnings, songs, and histories. They did not take from her. They added. For the first time since her awakening, Mira felt whole enough to recognize the truth. The root mother hadn't hollowed her. The fellowship had. Their surveillance, their experiments, their prices measured out in pieces of her mind. And now they were finished. Mira opened her eyes. Green light radiated through her veins, mapping her skin in glowing rivers. Her braids lifted slightly, weightless as if underwater. Her pulse echoed across the plaza, impossibly loud, like the heartbeat of a tree older than time. Vanar whispered, "What are you?" Mira stepped closer. "The end of you." He scrambled backward, slipping on shattered stone. "No, wait, Mira, please. Don't beg me," she said softly. "Beg the plants you tried to control." At her words, the roots answered. They wrapped around Vanner, not crushing, not harming, just holding him as firmly as he had once held her in that observation chamber. His breath came in startled bursts as he realized he couldn't move. "You're not going to kill me," he said quickly, desperately. "You're too human for that." "Maybe," Mira answered, "but the first garden isn't." The ground beneath him pulsed. A fissure opened. A soft green glow spilled upward. Vanner screamed as the roots pulled him into the earth. Not violently, not maliciously, just returning him to the soil he had poisoned. He vanished beneath the cracked stone, swallowed by roots thick with ancestral judgment. The ground sealed. The plaza fell silent. The roots settled. Mira stood alone in the center of Meridian's ruins, surrounded by the soft glow of ancestral seeds still fading into her skin. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Her breath steady and sure. It was done. The fall of Meridian had begun, and Mira had become the force that would finish it. She turned toward the horizon, where the first garden waited beneath the fractured city. Her braids whispered, "Grow, lead, bloom." Mira stepped forward. The world followed. 20 daughter of the first garden, chapter separator. The vault waited like a held breath. Cold metal ribs curved overhead. Their old fellowship seals flickering in the dim green glow of Mira's aura. The last of the corrupted machines hissed and died at her feet. Vines still wrapped around their shattered cores. Mira inhaled. The air was heavy with dust and data. Somewhere in the dark, memory seeds hummed like small, dreaming suns. She stepped forward. The vault door towered before her. Once carved with symbols of control, now those marks felt like warnings from a failed age. She lifted her hand. Roots gathered around her palm, spiraling in patient circles, ready to obey the oldest laws of the soil. "Time to sleep," she whispered. Roots slid into the door's inner seams. They pulsed, expanding. Metal groaned. Lights snapped. The entire structure sank into the earth, as if gently pulled into a grave already waiting. The Fellowship's vault, its experiments, its lies, its hunger for power, was sealed forever. And Mira did not feel fear, only completion. The chamber brightened with the soft glow of seed light, painting her face in warm hues. Her braids were newly woven, each one infused with a different oil. Petals for calm, bark for memory, sap for focus. Between each braid lay a vine thread, humming with her thoughts. The pattern told her story. Future Bloomwrights would touch those braids and echo her path. She had become the archive, but more importantly, she had become the choice, not the root mother's vessel, not the Fellowship's experiment. Something living and deciding and refusing to be claimed. Mira pressed her palm to her chest. Beneath her skin, the ancestral pulse answered like a quiet drum. "I will not hide," she said. "I will not be hidden again." The memory seeds around her brightened, as if listening. She walked toward the cracked stairwell that led to the surface, every step weaving strength into the soil. Her roots spread with her movement, not wild or vengeful now, but guiding, organizing, repairing. Machinery groaned and softened into mulch. Old walls exhaled. The earth settled. Mira reached the upper levels as dawn began its slow climb. She emerged from Meridian's bones, stepping into morning light that felt like a promise. The city was wounded, but breathing. Roofs sagged. Streets shimmered with dust. Yet seedlings already sprouted through broken pavement, small and stubborn and radiant. She knelt and placed her hands on the ground. The first garden had lived once. It could live again. But this time, its heart would not beat below the earth, guarded by secrets and managed by those terrified of power. It would grow beneath open sky, tended by someone who understood what it meant to carry a lineage without being consumed by it. Mira stood. Her braids rustled, whispering the memories she had chosen to keep. Her shadow stretched long across the ruins, shaped not like a weapon or a prophecy, but something quietly determined. She turned toward the eastern horizon, where untouched soil waited just beyond the last shattered block of Meridian. "Let's begin," she said. Wind passed through her braids. The roots beneath the city stirred. The seeds brightened. And the daughter of the first garden walked forward, ready to cultivate a world that had forgotten how to bloom. But the world did not remain still as she stepped into it. A breeze rose from the east, carrying motes of silver pollen that spiraled around her before dissolving into nothing. The earth shivered beneath her soles, the tremor subtle, but unmistakably alive. Somewhere deep below Meridian's fractured foundation, roots shifted to make way for her future work. Mira felt the pulse of the land respond to her presence, not as a servant bowing to its master, but as an equal awakening beside her. The soil recognized her. The ancestors recognized her. Even the city, scarred and groaning in the aftermath of its own brutality, seemed to lean in and listen. She crossed the ruined threshold where concrete gave way to raw ground. The sky widened. This was where she would begin. She lifted a memory seed from her pocket. Its shell was smooth, its glow faint but steady, holding the last untainted fragment of the first garden's breathwork. She cupped it gently between her palms. It warmed, sensing her decision. "You'll be the first," she murmured. She knelt and pressed the seed into the earth, covering it with a thin layer of soil. Her fingers lingered. A thread of her own essence slipped into the ground, weaving with the seed's inner hum. The soil brightened. Tiny lines of light spread outward in slow, deliberate spirals. Not explosive like the roots she'd wielded in battle, not violent or vengeful or wild. This was patient growth, measured, intentional, a promise written in roots. Mira sat back on her heels, watching the first tendril break the surface, a sprout the color of dawn-lit emerald. Trembling with newness, she exhaled and it steadied. "Good," she whispered. "Grow with me, not for me." Her braids stirred, alive with the memory oils she had woven hours earlier. Within them, the histories of the Bloomwrights shimmered, the first breath rituals, the soil songs, the names of the mothers and fathers who had shaped the old garden. But Mira felt none of the weight she had carried before the vault. Only inheritance, not obligation. Legacy, not chains. The sprout stretched taller. Mira rose, brushing dirt from her palms. The land swelled with a soft, rising heartbeat. More sprouts surfaced around her feet, drawn by the pulse she couldn't quite hide anymore. They unfurled in spirals and arcs, not uniform, each choosing its own direction. Wild, but not chaotic. Ancient, but not trapped in the past. The world was learning her language, and she was learning its. Mira stepped forward again, and the young shoots parted like respectful companions, weaving a narrow path for her to walk. She headed toward the ridge where the horizon sharpened into gold. From there, she would see farther, From there, the first garden could rise cleanly, without the shadow of Meridian pressing down on it. Her heartbeat synced with the land beneath her, soft echoes, like two drums aligned. As she climbed the ridge, a flock of dusk-feathered birds swept overhead. Their wings spread a pattern she recognized from her earliest braids, the ones her grandmother had woven when she was small. The flight mark of the Watchers, the species that had vanished after the Fellowship razed the old forests. Yet here they were, alive, searching, circling her as if they smelled the return of something they had lost. When Mira reached the top of the ridge, the entire valley stretched before her. Untouched earth, unclaimed soil, a quiet stage waiting for its first breath. Her chest tightened, not with grief, but with magnitude, with possibility. She took one slow breath, letting it fill her lungs, her braids, her bones. Then she raised her hands. The valley answered. Roots stirred, soil warmed, seeds long dormant whispered from beneath the surface. Drawn by her presence, like small hearts waking from a long sleep. "You're not forgotten," Mira said. "I'm here now." The wind swept past her in a rising arc. The birds shrieked their approval. The sprouts circling the ridge brightened with a soft glow. And in that moment, standing on untouched earth, ancestry thrumming in her veins, her future stretching wide and uncharted before her, Mira understood the truth of her new title. She was not the last of anything. She was the first Bloomwright of a reborn age, the first to bridge the past to the world above, the first to carry power without fear, memory without bondage, purpose without submission, the first to plant a garden big enough for generations to enter. She lowered her hands. The valley pulsed once, bright and sure. Mira smiled. "Then let's build a world that remembers how to bloom." And with roots stirring behind her and the future opening ahead, she walked into the valley, the soil softening beneath her steps, the wind carrying her name, and the first garden rising to meet her. But the valley had one more secret waiting. As Mira descended toward its center, she sensed an ancient hollow beneath the surface, a pocket of soil older than Meridian itself. It pulsed faintly, like a buried heartbeat, waiting for a hand to uncover it. Her scalp tingled. Her braids tightened, strands whispering against one another like reeds in a dawn breeze. She slowed, kneeling. The hollow called to her, not with desperation, but with invitation. Mira pressed her palm to the ground. Heat spread through her fingertips. In the darkness below, something stirred, a memory older than any the Fellowship had catalogued or distorted, a memory untouched by greed or intrusion. With a steady breath, she let her magic slip downward. The earth opened with a soft sigh. A smooth seed pod, large as her forearm, etched with delicate spirals, rose from the soil. Its glow flickered, shy and newborn, like a child waking in an unfamiliar room. Mira touched the pod gently. It fluttered, and a voice blossomed inside her mind. "Little Bloomwright, you who walks unbroken, grow with us." She gasped, eyes watering from the overwhelming warmth, not of heat or pressure, but recognition. This was no weapon, no command, no trial. This was a beginning, a clean one, a seed from the first garden that had survived untouched through the centuries, waiting for someone who would not force it open, someone who would not chain it, someone who would not fear its power, someone like her. Mira lifted it into her arms, and its glow brightened with trust. Her heartbeat synced with it, gentle and even. She felt its promise, its hope, its quiet belief that the world could be coaxed back into harmony. She rose with it, cradling the seed against her chest. Above her, The birds circled. Around her, sprouts curled in slow spirals. Beneath her, the land hummed with renewed breath. It felt like the world whispering, "She has returned, the one who remembers how to tend." The valley brimmed with potential, not destiny imposed upon her, but destiny she could choose. She walked deeper until she found a circle of untouched ground at the valley's center. The soil was soft and rich, unmarked by tools or footprints. It greeted her as if it had saved this place for her alone. Mira knelt and set the seed down gently. "Let this be the first," she whispered. "Not of domination, not of fear, but of care." Her braids rustled with a soft, resonant chime. The oils within them warmed. Every memory she carried, every ancestor, every ritual, every lost Bloomwright who had whispered to her through the vault, poured through her palms into the soil. Light threaded outward. Roots unfurled in radiant curves, not tearing through the ground, but weaving into it like a melody rediscovered. The valley breathed in. The sky brightened. The seed pulsed once, twice, 3 times, then it split. A single shoot spiraled upward, unfurling petals the color of river dawn. Its scent drifted across the valley, warm and delicate, like the first time her mother had braided her hair. Mira's throat tightened. She reached out, not to control, but to greet. The flower opened fully. A new garden began. And Mira felt herself settle, not as a weapon forged in a vault, not as a vessel carved by another's will, not as a Bloomwright bound to ancestral ghosts, but as something whole. A daughter of the first garden, a keeper of what could be. She stood, watching the valley brighten, with the first signs of life awakened by her hands. The path ahead would not be simple. Meridians still smoldered. The fellowship's remnants would not surrender their obsessions quietly. The world had grown dry with forgetfulness. But Mira was not afraid. She had roots now, deep, reaching, ancient and new. She lifted her face to the wind, letting the last of the valley's dusk settle against her skin. "Come," she said softly, not commanding, but inviting. "Let's make something beautiful out of what survived." The wind answered. The valley glowed. And with one final breath, Mira stepped forward into the world she would heal, seed by seed, braid by braid, memory by memory. The first garden blooming again in her footsteps. End.